Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. If it is already the New Year's where you live and you're part of the world, we got about 5 hours left here on the East Coast in the United States of America, but I am excited to be here with you all tonight. Of course, I am Derek Melinda, Night's Last Call, and we haven't been live for about a week or so. We took last week off, and quite frankly, it was a nice little break. Hopefully, everyone had a great Christmas or a great holiday, great Hanukkah, great Kwanzaa, or whatever it is that you celebrate. Hopefully, you got to spend some time with friends or family, or maybe you got to do some gaming. So hopefully everyone had a nice relaxing and rejuvenating period. I unfortunately am getting over a cold, so I apologize in advance if there's any sort of a weird nasally noise. I kind of got sick basically Christmas Eve, and then I spent most of the day after Christmas kind of just, box of tissues and cough drops and that sort of thing. So I'm on my way to recovery, but so far so good. Yeah, we sorry I got the stream started a little late. We're in the middle of a hot topic over in the Knights of Last Call Patreon Discord, where we're discussing fudging. So it's a hot take. What is up, everybody in chat? Oh, my good buddy Rich is here, Mr. SC Voldo himself. Happy New Year to you, Mr. Camp. Almost max level. Put in the work, buddy. Putting in the work. Getting it done. You'll have to catch the VOD. Well, I don't know that we're going to get into anything good. Maybe we will. But by the way, Pathfinder, PhD, I sent your shirt out the beginning of the week. So it should be there, hopefully, by the end of the week. So hopefully you'll be able to get that. And I threw in a couple extra bonus stickers because of the delay. So I appreciate the patience there. But yes, you'll watch the VOD next year, told like a true good dad joke. Appreciate it. Happy New Year to you, Mr. Beowulf. Torrin says, when I put my text in the bottom, yeah, if you have like a small thumbnail, it can get covered up for sure. I am aware of that, but I always forget to modify it. But thank you, Torrin. Jackal, what's going on? Yep, all the way around the big plasma sphere. Although technically our big plasma sphere is also rotating around the Milky Way galaxy. So technically, we are not in the exact same place we were before, right? We're further along the galactic route around the center of the Milky Way, but, we choose to celebrate here and now. I, for one, am just excited that technically the days are getting longer, although right now they're still quite short. We are technically getting towards longer days, which is very nice. I hate the short days of winter. Happy New Year from the UK. Thank you. DJ Rocktrix. I imagine it is probably just after midnight there in the UK. I saw there was some crazy low flight to Scotland, and I've always wanted to go to Scotland. I've always wanted to go to England in general. England, Wales, Scotland, so the UK in general. But I did see some crazy cheap flights up to Scotland. I don't remember if it was going into. I think it was going into Edinburgh or something like that. But in any case, I was like, man, I should just buy these tickets. I don't know when. Like, I was like, it was like maybe like April or something like that. I don't know exactly what the weather's like there, but I was just like, they're so cheap. I almost just bought them. And even though I had no plans, I had no idea what I would even do when I got there, but they were so cheap, I almost paid it. But then I remembered my passport expired during the pandemic, and I never refreshed it. So I got to get that done. Rule of Cool is saying hello from the future. Yes, the next year, from a year ahead of the year 2025. I still can't believe that's your avatar, Rule of Cool. Thank you so much for that. 13 hours in over there in good old New Zealand. Yes. It's so crazy. Being part of the Knights Last Call community means that I have all these, friends now and community members who are, all over the globe. And so it's so interesting to see. We have a lot of people from Australia, New Zealand. And so it's interesting to see how many people are like so far ahead in terms of the time. What's up, Mr. Boothby? Beowulf says fudging is cheating. I agree. Mikey the Goat. Hello. Calamachus. Excellent. Already well into 2025. Good to see that. While Calamachus says fudging is tasting. What's up, Roman? Hello. Tundalus, Happy New Year to you as well. The dumpster fire is burning for sure. Hello, Knights. Hello, Cephalopod. Nice to have you in here with us. Even though it's entirely arbitrary, I am quite ready for the feeling of separating from 2024. Elder Goblin Games, I completely agree with you. Fact is, 2024 was not a great year for me in pretty much any capacity. I mean, obviously, we had a lot of fun here on the channel and stuff like that, but, it was bittersweet. 2024, I did not get to do a lot of gaming. My friends were dealing with a lot of their own issues and busy life schedules and stuff with work and everything like that. So my gaming took a huge hit this year. And then, of course, we had to move out of our studio, which was just a lot of work and a lot of heartache there. My two co-hosts here on Night's Last Call, Bob and Aaron, have both been super, super busy. And, while I really appreciate Bob, being able to run some games for people on the Patreon and do what he can, I've missed having him be part of our shows. And obviously, Mr. Aaron Smith, really has not been available at all, this second half of the year. And I've really missed him. So, from the Night's Last Call perspective, it was kind of tough. And, moving out of the studio was a heartbreaker for me. I mean, honestly, it was. And it also kind of put me into a situation where I, was thinking like, okay, what do I want to do, with this channel? And how do I want to proceed forward with it? And so not like that was like a bad problem to have, like, being introspective about the channel, but just for me thinking about, where I want to go. Thank you for the super chat. I was talking about good friends from around the globe, all the way from the future. And Vin would be one of them. Happy New Year's from the future. Happy New Year's to you, self-confessed Nick. I really am happy that you got to come out, buddy, and be on the channel and get to see the studio before it went. So that was a really awesome thing that we got to do there, and I'm really happy that happened. Happy New Year to you, Mr. Glicker. Mr. Glicker is he's my con buddy now. I feel like now I go to con, except when he's too cool for me and he has to go hang out with all of his bougie friends. But I've really enjoyed the last couple of years getting to hang out with Steven at convention. So that was a bright spot. Origins was fun. Gen Con, I was a shortened Gen Con, but I was only there for a couple of days. But it was still great just to get to see people and hang out with patrons and some of the friends that I've made and all that other stuff. So so gaming wise, not so great. Channel wise, not so great. Health wise, not great at all, right? I went to the emergency room a couple times this year, had my panic attacks, and while those, I'm on the mend there, that was a rough couple months. And then, of course, obviously, I had a fire. My dog had a, major surgery, had to go to the emergency room. So, I was 2024, not a great one. But, we're here, we're living, we're learning. So it's all good stuff here. Again, apologize if I cough occasionally. I'll try not to do it directly into the microphone, but I am recovering from a cold. Happy New Year's to you as well, Mr. Moonlight. Good to have you. It's the kiddo's birthday. Okay, that's kind of cool to go. Sorrel, hello. Mark T, Happy New Year to you as well. Good to have you here. Hello, Woodland. Fellowship, good to have you here. Elder Goblin Games, what's going on, buddy? Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was fun getting to play. It was fun getting to hang out. It was fun getting dinner. It was cool that you got to do two days with us. You got to do a game with us. Got to do a show with us. That was a lot of fun. I will not be going to Page, unfortunately. I looked at flights, and Philly's just a bit too far for me to drive, and with everything going on right now, like I just need to focus on stuff here at home. So. Unfortunately there, but Paige looks like it'll be pretty cool. Happy New Year's, Zipper. Happy New Year's, Mr. Flamingo. Good to have you here, Doc. So yeah. Anyways, I again, like I was saying before we got in here, the dumpster fire, Night's the Last Call is going on with the ever popular topic of what is fudging. Hey, Doc Flamingo just re-subbed. Let's take a look there, buddy. That is 9 months for Mr. Doc Flamingo. Thank you, Doc Flamingo. Appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you. And many more, he says. Love to see it. Thank you so much for your support there. Good, everybody, actually. It's that part, I mean, I will say, again, this isn't like we don't really have a topic. If anybody actually does want to talk about something, by all means, please just bring it up. I'm just going to kind of just shoot the shit here with you guys. But again, I I am an analytical person, right? I do that professionally, and I've been doing that professionally for 20 years. But I'm just a sort of a generically analytical person. And, I sometimes wonder, like, Professor Dungeon Master, the man, the myth, the legend, right? Just kind of made a great video where he was kind of just trolling people, kind of mocking them for liking clickbait, complaining about clickbait while being the people to engage with clickbait, which I loved. And obviously, this channel, does not do anything remotely popular. We don't, one could argue we almost go out of our way to not do things that would be popular. But at the same time, views and growth of your channel is sort of an indication of, are you reaching people? Are you, is your message being heard? Do people are people picking up what you're selling? And by that measure, the channel did not do great this year. We grew barely. There was a channel, which I thought was kind of cool. This guy I think he's from Iceland or something, or maybe he's from Iceland, but he started up a 5e D&D channel, basically. And, nothing super special, just a nice talking head. He obviously put some time and effort into his audio-visual setup. I don't remember the name of it. Mystic DM, maybe, I think it was. Anyways. And I subscribed to him. He seemed like he was, enthusiastic young guy, and I wanted to, throw a sub to him. And I just saw a post. He's like, yeah, we're doing a stream to celebrate 20K subs, and he started his channel, like, I'm not even kidding you, like 2 months ago. And so, I'm not in for this for the numbers game. I don't really care about that per se. I don't really care about what that implies in terms of money. Hey, Lollipop, thank you.
Lollipop Candy tip $10. Happy New Year, everyone. Why do the passionate and interesting conversations on the CoLC Discord always start happening when I need to step away, lol?
You miss a little, you miss a lot. I mean, look at me. I almost missed the start of the stream because I was in there trying to argue with people and try to fight people. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of like it's kind of like Rune Lord against everybody else. I respect the hell out of Rune Lord because he's holding the line on his own. I gotta appreciate it. I gotta love it. If a man stands for nothing, he'll fall for anything, right? Yes, KOLC business talk. Not really business talk, but I mean, it is the end of the year, right? Like, what else are we going to talk about? Again, I apologize if I'm using my tissues. Let's see here. I think watching the Daggerheart VOD made me hate the discussion of what is fudging even more. Beyond lying about the die, the line is blurry as fuck. Well, yeah, and to be clear, I mean, what we're specifically talking here about is rolling the die and ignoring its result for what you feel is a better outcome. I mean, because I agree, it's a very weird and wonky area, right? Because part of a game master's job is to interpret results and make things up to a certain extent, and as a result of that, you can feel like that role expands to the entire scope of the game. And I think that there's sort of an idea here of there's like a fundamental agreement that we have that, yes, as players, we cede to the GM a certain amount of control, right? And of sort of omnipotent power, if you will. It's a bit like a democracy in a certain way, right? We vote people in, we ascribe them certain powers willingly because that's what we need for them to be able to do their job. The problem is if the GM, I mean, I guess it's kind of like, and maybe this is why I don't like it. Maybe it feels like you're being patronized or it feels like you're being infantilized, right? My understanding is that parents lie to their children all the time. And they do it for their own good, right? Or they do it because the parent knows better, or they do it because it's just going to make things easier, right? And parents will lie to their children all the time while telling them that lying is bad, right? And ascribing to the belief that we don't want dishonest people, and we don't want dishonest, we don't want to raise liars and deceivers and children, right? And yet we lie to our kids. Well, I don't have kids, but my understanding is people do this all the time, and that to me seems very counter-purposed. So the thing about a game, when I'm playing with a dungeon master or game master, and they are engaging in fudging, to me it feels like they are basically acting as a sort of parental figure, and I don't want them to be a parental figure, right? I'm okay. I'm a grown up. It's okay, Bob says parents equal the government. So I'm not going to say it exactly because it uses a bad word. But there's a really funny comic. He's just got such a great delivery, and I don't recall his name, but he's a young black comic, and he's up on stage and he's got a suit, and he's like talking really soft spoken, and he goes, I don't like to get political, but I do know this: the government is responsible for all of its people. I'm a father who has one son, and I lie to that dude all the time. It's just like so good. You've seen that skit? It's like, yeah, it's such a good. I mean, his delivery is off the charts. But yes, so yeah, I mean, if you think that in order to fulfill your role as a game master, you have to lie to your players, I think that's a very weird place to be in. It's definitely not a place I want to be in. That's where I mean, goes beyond, the structure of just even gaming. I'm trying to keep up with everything happening in chat here. Trying to keep up with the KLC Discord when you're in a very different time zone than everyone else. Yes, it is a fool's test. And to be fair, Shadram, we have been discussing this at length in the Discord revamp discussion, because one of the things that I have tried to do is understand that there's a lot of interesting conversations. I think there's a lot of valuable conversations happening. And because so many of them happen in these sort of free-form chats, by the time somebody logs on, it's the middle of the night for them. It can be very hard for them to get benefit from that. And I've tried to sort of angle people more towards, organized discussions. And we've tried threading in the past and forums, and people don't really seem to want to engage in that way. But I do it because I'm exactly what you're saying. But I also understand, as Vin says, that forums suck. Yes. I mean, and I like forums, but Discord's forums in particular do suck. And there are problems for them in general. But you did look at the dumpster fire chat and engage and immediately regret it. That's okay. It's fine. Cephalopod also had a tough 2024. Do you have any New Year gaming resolutions? Shadram, to game. I want to game more. And that doesn't just mean RPGs. I've found, especially with Oath and now Arcs, I have rediscovered my love for board gaming. Shout out to Cole Worley, shout out to Leader Games, shout out to Kyle Farron. And so, whether it's Root or Arcs or Oath, I definitely, and other board games, but that really just, I want to game more, Let's see here. We defy the algorithm, KLC. Yeah, I mean, but not like, I'm not trying to, put myself on a pedestal. I'm not trying to be holier than thou. I just don't care about most of that stuff. No, Omanal, I mean, for what I do and how I do it, and, the fact that I don't do videos, I do 2-3 hour streams. The fact that, we talk about expected value ratios, of fun to mechanical complexity ratios, and the fact that I can do that and get 1,000 or 2,000 views is crazy. It's crazy, Cephalopod, yes, Mystic Arts, yeah, and they blew up. And to be fair, I didn't catch all of his videos, but they were good, they were fine. And we were laughing a little bit because there was a comment where someone was like, "Wow, I really like you have a great delivery, you have a great charisma. I really hope to see you talk about other things other than somebody who is obviously angling for, I want to see some non-D&D stuff." And to be clear, this person was pretty open about it. The Mystic Arts person was basically like, "Nah, I'm going to talk about 5e D&D, and I don't know if they're saying that because that's the only thing that they're interested in, or they're saying that because they're like, I kind of want this channel, you know, to be something that, you know, could maybe be my job. And to be clear, to be fair to all the people out there, you know, I'll echo sort of what Professor Dungeon Master said in his last video. You know, when you know, he was talking about content creators coming to them and being like, "Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be a shill if I talk about D&D," and he said, "Don't worry about the fucking haters. They don't pay your bills." And he's completely right, because it's easy for me to do my channel the way that I want to do it, because number one, I have a very dedicated and loyal Patreon base, which, you know, pays my bills, so to speak, you know, especially the bills that I had when the channel did have sizable bills, because we paid rent and we paid for utilities and we paid for internet and we paid for all this stuff. But also I have a job, right? And, you know, I work from home, so it's pretty easy to, you know, sit in my office and get my work done and finish up 4 o'clock, 4:30, throw a thumbnail, you know, up on the thing, go grab dinner and then come eat, you know, and then come and do the stream. So it does, you know, it allows me to be able to do this. So I don't have to, but if for some odd reason I decided to be a madman and, you know, quit my job, or if, you know, you know, the whole company blew up or something in some massive insider trading scheme or something, would I have to, if I wanted to do this channel as a full-time job, would I have to change the tone of the content? Would I have to change the nature of the content? Would I have to change the topics of the content? Yeah, probably. I mean, if I wanted to be monetarily successful. Am I going to make it to midnight with this stream? Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. Derek says, I actually fudge, but I've somehow still found a way to disagree with the Lord High Summoner. Let's see here. Happy New Year's to you, Smendon. Beowulf says, I never lie to my children. So Vin says, lying about the die is definitely fudging, but I keep thinking about what Daggerheart GM can spend fear on, and I'm slowly losing my mind. And I understand that, because there's an idea there of, does the GM, because your idea is that if it's kind of like the feat problem, right, in D20, where if the feats didn't exist, then it would be really easy to just say, yeah, you could totally do that. You know, yeah, you could totally, you know, jump off the top of the cliff and slam your sword into them extra hard. I don't know, we'll make something up. But then when a feat exists that specifically lets you do that, now suddenly you're like, am I not allowed to let somebody do that? Because now there's a feat that they could have taken that they're supposed to do that for, you know? And so it's kind of like the same thing, but in reverse. It's going to the GM and saying, as a GM, can't I just make something happen? And you're like, okay, well, now you have this fear mechanic. And you're like, okay, so I can't unless I do have the resource. Yeah. Mizram, is that the Warhammer, the old world fantasy battle books I see behind you? Yeah, it probably is. Yes. Yes, it is. I, of course, have been and will be a massive, well, I don't know if I'll always be, but I'm a huge Warhammer fan. I have been since 4th edition, the one with the goblins and the elves in the box set. Played through 5th, played through 5th, but not much. Love 6th, liked 7th, even though it had some problems. And then we actually really liked 8th edition, even though a lot of people did not like 8th edition. And then, of course, they killed it and made Age of Sigmar, and I stopped playing completely. So when they brought up the old world, I was like, yeah. Unfortunately, at the time when I used to play over at my buddy's house. We had a custom-built table, and we had a room just dedicated to playing Warhammer. But he moved to the West Coast and got rid of all that stuff. So I don't really have a place to, you know, to play anymore. So I bought the Bretonnian box set. I bought the Orc and Goblin box set. I still have all my high elves, my dwarves, my wood elves, my orcs and goblins. Do I have anybody else? I think that's it. But I haven't really actually played with the old world rules yet. I've watched a couple bat reps, but so far I think I like the rules of the game. To be fair, I really like when 8th edition ended and they brought out Age of Sigmar, and I thought it was shit. And then like people made the 9th edition unofficial rules out on the internet, which were okay. But I actually did really get into Kings of War for a minute, and I really liked that. But like so many people were just like, no, it's not GW. I don't want to play it because it's not GW. But I thought the Kings of War rules were really great. I know they're like on their 3rd edition or something now. So, yeah. Anyways, sorry. Let's see here. 2024, not your best year. Trying to figure out how to make 2025 better. Feeling it. Love it. I'll be a shill for us. Thanks, Bob. Jonah says, I think he was pretty dead on. Yeah, I agree. I thought he did really well. Yes, my thumbnail also always bad. Correct. You know, fantastic. Shadron says that Professor DM video was great. All creators should shit on their viewers like that. And I love it. And I even said that last week on Roll for Combat, or I think it was, maybe it's 2 weeks ago or something. But I was like, I love Professor DM because he just openly just trolls his viewership by being like, I made a bunch of videos that I thought were great and you guys hated them. And then I talked about fucking Elon Musk and you guys clicked on that shit like it was, you know, like flies on shit. So yeah, I watch most of his videos too. I think he does good stuff. Did you all see that How to Be a Great GM is shutting down as a channel? He's moving on to a Star Trek channel. Oh, okay. Interesting. Derek, what's your favorite non-D&D game at the exact moment and why? It's a great question. I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to say Torchbearer because that's the game I've been kind of really amped up about to run. But do I think that that's my favorite game? No. What is my favorite non-D&D game at the moment? It's a great question. I actually don't know. I mean, I guess my answer would be Torchbearer because, again, that's just what I've been really hyper fixated on recently. I'm interested to see what it could do because to put it kind of blankly, and I've talked about this before, there are two wolves inside of me. And I'm streaming and I can't pass up this bad take. Fabula points are not fudging because it's the rule of the game. Anyways, sorry, I'm actually typing on my channel because I just can't do this. But anyways, why do I like Torchbearer so much right now? Or why at least I am interested to do that? Is because the problem I have is that I love the idea of character exploration, right? And this is one of the reasons why I love PBTA games, Monster Hearts and Avatar and Masks and all those fun PBTA games. So I love the idea of a deep character exploration. I'm less interested in exploring some story and more interested in exploring how characters react and why. And I think that's really interesting. But every time I play those games, I go, man, but I love dungeons. I love dragons. I love fighting stuff. I love treasure. I love disarming traps. I love solving ancient riddles in an ancient ruined crypt where cyclopean runes cover the walls and a faint archway glows with a blue magical field, and beyond lies a glittering chalice filled with rubies. And then as you approach, right, from the darkness of the sides of the ancient crypt come the long ancient dead, dragging behind them their rusted Baroque armor and weaponry. What do? I love it. I love, Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I love both those things. And a lot of times when I try to play, the Avatar Legends RPG, the let's be emotional, let's be characters, I find myself missing, swords and sorcery and treasure and Dungeons and Dragons. But then when I go and play D&D, I'm like, man, this game is so flat. This game is so one-dimensional. Yeah, sure, we could role play, but it doesn't really mean anything. We're just doing it because, you know, we want to. You know, to me, role playing, you know, what I call fluffy bullshit time in D&D is kind of like, you know, having a miniature that you've, you know, maybe made on Hero Forge or something, or printed up on your STL file on your printer, and you painted it, right? It looks nice, you know, it's very nice. It's very pretty, but you don't really have to do that to play the game. And for some people, they really enjoy doing that, but it has kind of nothing to do with the game, right? It's just something extra that you're doing because, you know, you wanted to. So I find myself lacking in that fact that the D&D game doesn't have any of those mechanics. So Torchbearer comes along and says, hey, I'm Burning Wheel, which is fundamentally a game about, you know, exploring, you know, a character's beliefs. And here's, you know, basically basic BX D&D. Let's merge them together and let's have a dungeon crawling game where we explore characters' beliefs, goals, and instincts. And that's interesting to me. So I would say that is my favorite non-D&D game at the moment. For that reason, I'll cheap out for that. Couple things here. Agile Monk has just joined the adventure. Agile Monk, welcome. Welcome to the adventure. Appreciate you. Let me crack open my Diet Mountain Dew. No, it's Diet Mountain Dew. I thought it was Mountain Dew Zero. But in celebration of you, thank you, Agile Monk. Welcome. I'm glad to see you here. Thank you so much for that. Enjoy your loyalty badge, and you get some fun emojis. We need to, I think we need to update them again. Maybe we'll do that in the new year. Tundalus, I'm sorry I missed you if you already hit the road, but hitting the road with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Ton. Hitting the road, so I'll be listening to the rest. My year sucked too. Wow, well, great. But finding KLC was a real highlight. Awesome. You guys rule. Have a great holiday, Derek. Well, drive safely, and I hopefully you listen to this VOD and you find some fun times and find it interesting. But yeah, you know, thanks ton to listen. You've been a lot of fun to have in the chats, and to have you here as part of the group and joining conversations, and I really appreciate your viewership, and I really appreciate the financial support as well. But you know, mostly you. So thank you, Tundalist. That's awesome, and happy New Year to you as well. Let's see here. Bob, why is it arcs? I don't know what that means, Bob. That sounds like a why is it always missed? And going back to what I was saying earlier, Vin says it's a perfect analogy. It's like the feet problem. When I was talking about why fear in Daggerheart is problematic, well, for Vin, right? Because it's kind of like by codifying it, you now make it so that everything that you wanted to do before is somehow now illegal. I do, Bob. I do. I mean, Arcs is definitely my favorite new board game. I mean, there's no doubt about that, for sure. I think that game's excellent. You could probably let them do it with disadvantage without the feat. And Beowulf, I've talked about this on this channel before, but part of the problem with that is actually kind of a double kick in the nuts, because now you're saying they can do it, but now you're actually making it so that they're less likely to succeed. And not just that. So in other words, you've actually set up a situation where they are now more likely to do nothing. But worse than that, you're implying that if the feat didn't exist, you might just let them do it anyways. So the feat is still fucking them, but now it's almost worse, because now you're letting them do it. You're just letting them do it badly. And so in some ways, it would actually be better for them if you said, no, you can't do it, because then they would be forced to do something that would actually be effective. Assuming that for a moment, we assume that doing something with disadvantages is a pretty sizable, you know, penalty to the point of actually doing it. Agile Monk, Derek, I have 5 very large shelves of TTRPG, unknown about the digital. How many shelves do you have back there, sir? Well, because I just had my house painted, I had to take all of my RPG stuff down. However, I had to take all my RPG stuff down, so including my extra shelves. So to wit, if we kind of look over here, so I have all of these shelves here, and then over here, all these boxes over here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these boxes. Those are all filled with RPG books as well. And then over here, there's a bunch of boxes here. That's a box of our shirts, but that's sitting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's sitting on like 6 or 7 boxes of RPG books that were up on my shelves. So all in total, I don't know. I have a lot. That was what I would say. I would say I have a lot. Okay. Oh, I kind of messed that up. All right. Sorry about that. Sam says, welcome to the adventure. New member, Sam. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Love to have you. Sam, I don't know that I don't know that I recognize your name from a lot of our streams or chats. Are you new to our streams? Sometimes I recognize people and love to see it. Thank you for the support. I'd love to hear it, but thank you for sponsoring this channel and thank you for being part of this. And that's awesome. Hopefully, maybe you're one of our VOD viewers who just happens to have the night off and you get to hang out with us for once, in which case that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. That is really awesome. So yeah, anyways, long story short, I have probably, if we assume that this like IKEA shelf unit is like 1 unit of books, this is a 5x5, and then on top of it I have a 4x1, and on the side I have a 4x1. So that's 25 plus 8, so that's 33, and then I probably have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I probably have another 16 in the boxes. So we'll just say 50. I have 50 cubes worth of RPG books. If this is like a standard cube unit of books. In other words, too much. All right, sorry. People were chatting and shouting. And I still want to go and crush Lord High Summoner's dreams. No, he's actually great. He's actually gonna be playing in my Torchbearer game. I'm really excited about it. So anyways, we will see how much you like Torchbearer after me and Gaul team up. Yes, it'll be very interesting because, of course, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be running 2 Torchbearer campaigns. One is going to be they're going to be every other week and or twice a month, and one's going to be for one group, and another one's going to be for another group of patrons who have acquired tickets through playing games or running games, I should say, or being a high tier member. And I'm going to set them in the same world, so they're going to kind of be rival adventuring parties that are going to be sort of going against each other. Not like directly. We're not going to do like PvP, but you know, it's going to be like more like a friendly rivalry or maybe a not so friendly rivalry. But we'll see. All right.
Duncan DT tipped $5. Derek, what is best in life?
What is best in life? Well, that's simple. To crush your enemies, to see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of the women. That is what is best in life. Honestly, while I have not been doing a lot of enemy crushing or hearing any lamentations of women, what is best in life for me personally is my puppies. I love my dogs, and they are what get me out of bed and keep me going. I do love my dogs a lot, so definitely the best thing going on for me right now. But that, you know, like I said, I'm single. I'm kind of floating around through the universe, so I don't really have a lot of structures or ties. No doggo cam. Well, we do have a doggo cam. There's just no doggo there. Yeah, see, the doggo cam is empty right now. I think they're laying down with their mom. All right, so let me get caught up here again. Let's see. Shadram says, after watching the VOD of our map making stream, I hesitate to call that a map making stream, Shadram. That was literally me playing around with a brand new piece of software, Incarnate, that I had never used before and trying to get a hand for it. I made the most tropey map I could, and now I want to play there. I forgot how fun Spider Woods and Haunted Castles can be when trying to be interesting. And Shadram, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I've talked a lot about this on this stream many times. There's a reason that we have tropes, and they're awesome. And, you know, you're not trying to be the next Brandon Sanderson when you make a game for your home group. And I think that a lot of GMs, in a desperate ploy to be the next big thing, overdo it. And they end up coming up with these crazy ideas that just people have a hard time buying into, especially when the players don't have. I mean, it's one thing if the players collaboratively build, right, with you, and they build the stuff, and then they have a bit more of an input into it. But if you're presenting them with a world and you're trying to make everything crazy and weird and new, you can't expect them to have any sort of buy-in to this world because they don't understand any of it. And Mark Rosewater, right, the lead designer of Magic the Gathering, teaches us how important resonance is. See, I can throw a forest on a map, and maybe I put a couple spider web, icons in it as well, and I can call it the Spider Haunt Woods. And I don't have to tell you anything about my world. You get it, And if you're like, oh, is it kind of like Mirkwood from The Hobbit? And you're like, yes, it's like Mirkwood from The Hobbit. And everyone goes, cool, I get it. Now you can add your little touches and your little flourishes and your little flares, but being everybody to have a strong starting foundation, I think is so important. And so while I think that you can overdo tropes, I don't think most people actually use them enough. Figured it was time to join and just provide some support. Well, the Agile Monk, thank you so much for that. That is amazing and awesome. I appreciate it. Bob's on his third glass of wine. I could have actually gone for some wine tonight, but again, I've been sick, so I've been trying to, hold off and just, avoid things that might make me worse. Beowulf says, Torchbearer says you have to talk in character first person, so if a player doesn't and you still answer them in play, you're fudging. Sort of, Beowulf. Torchbearer also talks about how important and critical table talking is, and talking as players and discussing things out of character. That is also something that is very clearly expressly discussed in the game. So sort of, but also sort of not. Christoph says, can D&D be forced to have role-playing matter? I've been running games that play like Burning Wheels, run in Pathfinder. I know it's not D&D, but it's close enough. I agree. Games where characters question their beliefs. I mean, you can. You just have to create a system, I think. If you want the game to care, then the rewards and, arguably the rewards or the punishments of the game system have to sort of reflect on that, I think is what it comes down to. So can D&D be forced to have role-playing matter? Sure, arguably D&D used to have role-playing matter. And for those of you who don't know, we've talked about this on our earlier streams, but in first edition AD&D, you had an alignment, and the GM would secretly track your alignment. There was this graph. Let's see I don't know if you guys know this graph. Let's see if I can find it really quick. First edition alignment tracking chart.
Steven tipped $10. Happy New Year's.
Hey, yo. Steven, thank you. Thank you so much. Happy New Year's to you as well. Steven, nice to see you here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Happy New Year's to you and yours as well. That's pretty awesome. Let's Sam. Awesome. I'm glad you joined. Happy to see you. Nice rocking that emoji. Appreciate it. So yeah, like I was saying here, if we go and we look at imager, here we go. So if we look at this alignment chart here, okay, used to be what the GM would secretly track for your character, okay? They would actually, put little dot, maybe make an X or something like that, and move this stuff around. And if the GM decided that your character, who is listed as lawful good, by the way, and let's say over the course of, several, sessions, they're marking that, okay, you're coming down, you're moving down towards lawful neutral. And then they decide that you've crossed into the lawful neutral territory. Your character really hasn't been acting good. They've been acting lawful. So that the GM has been moving you more towards lawful neutral. They would inform you after the result of an alignment audit that your character has changed alignment. And now you are not lawful good, you are lawful neutral. And as a result of that, you would need double the amount of experience that you would normally have needed to get to the next level, because you could try to make this a diegetic reason. Oh, because of this, your character is confused about who they are and what they're doing. But honestly, it was a punishment for not role playing your character correctly. So, whenever you're trying to reward something, right, there's negative rewards and positive punishment, right? Sticks and carrots. Nowadays, we tend to try to go with carrots, but technically sticks work as well. You would not lose a level, Omen Owl. You would lose all the experience you had gained in the current level, and then you would need double the experience to get to the next level. I could be a little wrong about that, but I don't think I am. So, D&D technically used to do that, right? All right, man, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in here right now, and I'm sorry if I'm missing some people. I see Stephen Palmer's in chat, and he's one of our OGs, so I love to see that he's here. Thank you, Stephen, for being here. So yeah. Great Goldworm says the way Torchbearer creates a system that makes you roleplay your race is really cool. Yeah, the nature descriptors are really fun, and I think it creates this really interesting tension between being a member of society and being an adventurer, and sort of setting those at opposite ends to each other. It reminds me a lot of the Avatar balance track, which I think is really, really interesting system as well. And Christoph is showing their support for Torchbearer. Paladin Actual. Rough year as well, but happy I found y'all. Here's to better. Thank you, Paladin Actual. Still love Paladin Actual's name. It's a BSG reference. Happy New Year's, Kalana. Nice to have you here. Pitch us arcs, Derek. Okay. Arcs is a I don't know how to pitch Arcs. Arcs is a 4X Twilight Imperium-like game, but with none of the crazy pieces and none of the crazy complexity, mixed with a resolution system that is more like a trick-taking game like Euchre. So it is unusual in that it sort of has this element of input randomness instead of output randomness, which is to say what actions you can take at any given. The game proceeds over 5 chapters. And at the start of each chapter, you get a hand of cards. And those hand of cards are random. And depending on what card the lead player plays, depends on what cards from your hand you can play and how powerful they can be. In other words, you don't get to just have free form of I can take any action I want in the game. You're limited by your hand. And of course, you get your hand at the beginning of the round so you can kind of plan your options. But of course, what you can do is sort of predicated on what your opponents are doing. So you can't just lock in to a singular strategy where you say, I'm going to do X, and then I'm going to do Y, and then I'm going to do Z, because you don't know if you're going to have the cards that are going to enable you to do that. Furthermore, there are 5 ways of scoring points. It's ultimately a victory point game. There are 5 ways of scoring points in the game, but by default, all of them are turned off. A player each round has to sort of activate one of the scoring options. A scoring option may not be activated in a round, which means that the character who's going for the aggressive military campaign, there is a way to score points by counting up how many damaged or destroyed ships that you've blown up. But if nobody activates that point scoring, if you don't activate it or no one else activates it, it doesn't matter how many ships you blow up, you won't get any points for that. So what that means is both what actions you have available to you and what will score you points in any given round will change from chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter. So I think that it really is a strategic game, but it avoids the problem that a lot of strategy games have of this is the best action and I'm just going to do it and I'm just going to take the best through course. And it really I think helps avoid the game from becoming overly solved, which I think is awesome. I want to play Arcs. I loved Oath. Yeah, Oath is another good game as well. I think Arcs has a lot of potential in the Oath space with its campaign mode, which is not really a full campaign the way that you might think of like Pandemic Legacy or Gloomhaven. It's a version of the game of Arcs where you basically play 3 games of Arcs back to back to back. A game of Arcs is going to take 2 to 3 hours. So you could think of it as one big long day where you and your buddies get together and, you set up the game, you play game 1, you take a break, you maybe, grab a sandwich, you play game 2, and then you grab dinner, and then in the evening you play game 3 and everybody goes home and you have this big like 9-10 hour game of the day, which is like what people do when they play Twilight Imperium, for example. Or you could do it where you say, hey, we're going to play our 3 games over the course of a week. Maybe we're playing online, or maybe we'll play it over the course of a month. We get together once a week and play the game. But they're all 3 games, so it's a little bit different in that respect, which I think is fine. So that's ARCs. Those boxes must be a workout to lift. Oh, they are very heavy. I probably should have packed them lighter than I did. What edition of D&D do you have the most content books for? Well, if you combine 3rd edition and 3.5, I mean, they're 3rd edition is kind of what it is. 3rd edition, and it's not even close. I probably have the least amount of books for 1st edition AD&D, just because they didn't really make that many books. Second most would be 5th edition. Third most would be 2nd edition. Fourth most would be 4th edition, and number 5, the top, is 3rd edition for sure. 3E plus 3.5 by far. I think I own every single official 3rd edition and 3.5 edition hard or softback book. I think I own all of them. I think it's a lot, and they were publishing a lot of books back then. I would love to see your give and take on Die RPG and Heart. Well, we did a video on Heart. See, this is how you know that the YouTube algorithm hates us. I did an entire 2-3 hour look at Heart. To be clear, I will reference this by saying I did not get it at first. I understood the mechanics. I didn't understand that it was like British, and there's like this weird. They were trying to be very British in this kind of weird British humor way. But I did do an entire deep dive on Heart, or not deep dive. Sorry, first look. I have not done Die RPG though. Happy New Year's, Lord of the Ring Rock. I don't know what that's about. Lodrock. Make sure you fudge in Torchbearer to make things harder for Lord High Summoner so it's more dramatic. You can't. You can't, actually. That's not the way the game works. Dogs are greater than people. I tend to agree. Oh, I love the puppers, Daryl. Let's see here. I had in a region called Orkland, and I couldn't believe I never thought of it. I live in Auckland. Resonance is such a good concept. Is there a video of Mark talking about it, or is it just the blog post? Well, he did a video, Vin, where he gave 20 lessons over 20 years. He does this long talk, I think, at like a game design conference. And one of the points that he talks about is resonance, but he may have talked about it in other places as well. Yeah, Great Gold Worm, by the way. Great Gold Worm, also from 13th Age. Right, it's like the Dragon Empire. It's simple, but you get it immediately. He's done an entire podcast on it. Yeah. Again, he's definitely talked about it before. It's not the first time. If a table is given the GM authority to fudge, I find no issue doing it. But if even one player disagrees with it, you're breaking a social contract. Fudging should be discussed in session 0. It is cheating and breaks trust when not given explicit authority to do so. When you roll, you are telling the table you do not have an obvious or prescribed outcome. You are consulting the oracles for something you are leaving to fate. I've never heard of a good excuse for fudging without consent. And no surprise here, I completely agree with Stephen Palmer. If I ever roll something that I need to take back, I will start a meta conversation and allow the table to discuss my mistake. Correct. Where you go, I think that is very true. Because again, and I think that a lot of people who support this would find that conversation have really awkward to have at the beginning of session 0 and be like, we're sitting around, we're going to play 5e D&D. And I go, hey everybody, how do you guys feel about grotesque violence? How do you feel about overt sexuality? Lines, veils, the whole thing. You're like, also, I want to let you know, that I will be fudging in this campaign. And occasionally, when you make a roll, I'm going to ignore the results and just kind of go with what I want to have happen or what feels right. And I just want everybody to know that. And that, to be fair, if everybody goes A-okay, then it's all Gucci. I think we're all adults. We all signed up for it. Let's go. I'm asking permission to lie to you. You're saying go for it. We're on board. I don't think most people would do that though, because I think most people understand the reason why you have to lie about fudging is because if you told the players that you were doing it, they wouldn't have fun anymore. So that should be your clue that there's some sort of missing link there as well. Yeah. And also completely agree. There's nothing wrong with the GM saying, look, I made a mistake here. I was treating this creature like it was level 10. It's only level 6. Its fireballs should not have been doing that much damage, or I was getting the breath weapon damage wrong. And you guys want to roll that back, or how do you want to handle it? I just think you should have that conversation openly and treat it like adults, The words demonic and beatific are lame as fuck, but I do love alignment, and I'll never change my mind. Such a good shorthand. And that's just what it is. And I think that's why people dislike it, is because D&D has always been about this one thing, which is Dungeons and Dragons. It's about exploring dungeons and killing monsters and finding treasure, and that's what the game's about. So anything that it wasn't about, the game, if it did include it at all, did it in a very shorthand way. And the way that it did it in a very shorthand way was, the game didn't really have skill systems. And then when it did, it was like, that we added skills to the game. All right, make a percentage roll, move on with your life. And it did the same thing with alignment. It said, look, of course, people are very, complex, and they have all these things. But you know what? We're not really here for that. We're here for Dungeons and Dragons. So we're just going to put this shorthand on it. What's your ethical axis? What's your moral axis? And boom. That's the shorthand way to define your character. And it is a shorthand, kludgy, clumsy, the resolution is very bad, but from 10,000 feet up, it works pretty well. And if that's the case, if your game isn't about character personality, it's just about dungeons, then it works perfectly fine. The problem is, as people began getting more introspective about their characters, and people wanted to start exploring the nuances, not just of their own characters, but of their enemies, alignment began to feel less like a tool and more like a straitjacket. And that's why people, I think, started, clawing against it. Then you had the issue of this very liberal notion of it being sort of this cultural determinism, and this sort of exoticism of prescribing this alignment to a certain grouping of people, and having that have these kind of connotations to stereotypes that we have about real people in the real world. I'm of two minds about that, as on one hand or the other. I'm on one hand, I'm totally fine with saying demons are evil, orcs are evil, but I also understand that stereotypes are a bad thing. But I've never believed that saying that orcs are evil means that I don't like brown people. So I don't, again, I understand where people are coming from that, but I don't personally get it. Kalana, it did do something with that. Where, like at the end of the game, you're supposed to track if they were greedy or something like that. Yeah. You're right about that. It was called the alignment audit, Patrick. It was. Torin, what about integrating feats and meta currencies with position effect? Both allow you to improve your position effect. Well, Torin, technically it does do that, right? Because you can push for effect, or you can push, right? So you could trade position for effect, but you can also push for effect. So effect essentially, and your pushing for effect costs stress, and stress is effectively a meta currency. So yeah, you kind of already can do that in those games if you assume that stress is a meta currency, and I kind of think it is. Okay, so I'd ask Sam, like, where did they come from? Because again, someone signing up for the adventure is awesome, but I don't recognize the name. Been lurking since the first Pathfinder 2 video and the glorious Hook Mountain Massacre, and for that, I'm gonna, you're gonna get a Horizon for that one. Horizon Thunder Sphere. Anyone who can appreciate the Hook Mountain Massacre, they're in the right spot. Because there's not many people that can truly appreciate the Hook Mountain Massacre. We'll say that. I feel the need now, actually, when I occasionally will get will occasionally get new new viewers who will like be leaving comments on videos from 4 years ago, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is such a great Pathfinder 2 AP. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to see these guys tackle the next adventure." And I just binge watched 5 episodes, 8 episodes. I always feel the need because I don't want to get hurt. I always find the need to reply to those comments and say, "Just letting you know. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm just letting you know the campaign ends very abruptly, and you may not like it. So before you go and invest whatever 100+ hours of watching this campaign, I want to let you know. I'm giving you the heads up. I don't want to fudge you. It ends questionably depending on how you want to view it, right? Shadram, again, if you're open about it, I think that's fine. Ian Ryder, nice to see you. Yeah, it's been a while. Happy New Year's from New Zealand. Yeah, we're getting close here. 4 hours away, ready to go. Bob shouting out our boy Stephen Palmer. Oh, okay, Omanal. Immediately. Okay, so you lose a level and you go back to the very beginning of the next lower level. So it's even worse than I thought it was. Thank you for the correction, Omanal. That is awesome. Watched literally all of your videos, and joining has been coming, but I blame you because your awesomeness. I have spent many thousands on TTRPG books, and that is the blessing and the curse of being aware of how many cool, awesome games are out there. Number one, you end up spending a lot of money. Number two, you get this weird sort of existential dilemma because you're like, I know I can't play all these games, and RPGs aren't exactly a fast hobby, so it can be really, really tough to get it all in. Magmite. Hey, Derek, I've been a viewer / lurker for quite a few months now. Found the channel through Pathfinder 2nd Edition Tactics. Many people have. I've learned a lot about RPGs and jamming through your live streams, so I'm really grateful for those. Well, thank you, Magmite. I appreciate you coming in here. And again, a lot of people came to start with us with Pathfinder 2 because that was the game I was playing. I was playing with a group of players who had never played RPGs before, definitely had never played Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So what was on my mind at that time was teaching people how to play role-playing games and teaching people how to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So that was how our channel started. But then those players who were playing with me, people like Bob, were like, hey, what about these other games? And can we talk about some of these other games? And so I said, well, yeah, I've got a lot of games. And so that's how the channel sort of grew. So in some ways, people who came along that Pathfinder 2nd Edition path kind of mirrored the path that, that people like Bob, who was on here on the channel playing with me, went through, where they got introduced to the hobby through Pathfinder 2nd Edition and then naturally sort of expanded and sort of expanded into other areas. All right, here he is. He's here, Lord High Summoner. Why is it that people salivate for systems that are built on the idea of fudging, but mechanicizing it, and those are lauded, but utilizing the same ideas as a tool, and you're literally Satan? I'll never understand you all. Now, Lord High Summoner, I know you like to say that people strawman things. I don't think anybody's saying that you're Satan if you fudge. So you talk about, putting out the straw man or putting out a bad analogy. I will say this. Number one, a lot of people hate the idea of mechanized fudging. Because in the opposite way, they don't want any sort of system that sort of applies to it. So there's not everybody salivates over it. The reason why those are mechanics is because it's the idea that by making it a mechanic in the game, you are setting the ground rules and the understanding for that when this happens, it is happening because of an exchange of some sort of currency. It is occurring within the game environment. That there is a cost to this action. That it's not just something that I'm giving to you because I think it would work better. But why does that remove it as a possible tool in totality? Skipping ahead here a little bit. Pathfinder 2nd Edition hero points are a kind of mechanized fudging. You're absolutely right, Michael. They are, actually. But why does that remove it as a possible tool in totality? Well, it doesn't. The question is not about whether or not fudging is an effective tool. It's about whether it is a moral tool. And I don't think it is. I think it is effective. In fact, let me disperse with this. Do I believe that, okay, if I had a group of people playing, let's say, we'll just say 5e D&D, okay? If we're playing 5e D&D and we're playing it, kind of straight out the book, whatever that means, and we're going through some game, and they have certain expectations, right? They don't understand it, but they have certain expectations of what they expect a game to be like and what they want their experience to be like. And I play them through a game, and we roll the dice, let the dice fall as they may. Versus, we play 5e, and I am secretly manipulating the numbers and the results behind the screen without their knowledge to give them what I will coin to be, quote, a better experience. Will that group have a better time with me just running 5e straight up, dice fall where they may, or will they have a quote unquote better time if I am, manipulating things behind the screen? I think that they will have a better time when I'm manipulating things behind the screen, right? Because it's going to feel like, wow, that was amazing. We were almost dead, and then we won at the last minute. It felt like just like a movie. Holy shit, right? So I think they would have a better time. But to achieve that result from a ethical or moral perspective, I had to lie and cheat. And I think that sort of makes it so that it's not okay. It's kind of what it comes down to for me personally, because to get that experience, I had to violate some element of trust, which is that the players believed that what was happening in the game was, for lack of a better word, real. And without their knowledge, I have stolen that from them. And I have to know, number one. So there's also that. I mean, let's forget about the GMing thing. I don't like to fudge just because I think it's boring as shit. So now, of course, I remove any of this ambiguity in my own games because, and Bob's here, he can attest to this, maybe not for every little random, mook or minion, but if it's like a big monster, I'm like, Bob, 180, that's its hit points. You track him for me, buddy. I number one, offload work to the players. Always a big fan of that. GM has to already do too much. Number two, there's no doubt that there's fudging. I'll be like, 180 hit points, AC 42. Let's go, boys. And then boom, we're on the, and I even if I wanted to, I couldn't because I've put it out there, I know we're skipping all over here. Bob needs some fudge. I do like fudge, the actual. I love peanut butter fudge. That shit's awesome. Shout out to Grandpa's Cheese Barn and the Sweets Shack. You're gonna check the Heart video out tomorrow. Awesome, fantastic. How long am I gonna be on? Roll for Combat. I got nothing going on. We got lake effect snow warming coming in probably tonight. It's raining already. It's supposed to turn over to snow sometime in the next couple hours. I don't know if I'm going to go all the way to midnight, but we'll see how I feel. So far, I feel so pretty good. Like I said, I've been sick for the last week. So, let's see. Dr. Metropolis prefers just law and chaos on the alignment spectrum. That's very old school. Original D&D, like basic D&D, doesn't even have good and evil. It just has law and chaos. Could you use alignment like nature and Torchbearer, but lawful and chaotic actions? Yeah, that would also work like Avatar, like the balance track.
DR Metropolis tipped $5.
Hey, Dr.
My
Metropolis.
goal is to give my players a good time. I fudge all the time. We're not going to the Goblin Caves. We're checking out the where-at sewers no matter which they choose. The stats are the same. The cave and the sewer are a difference in description.
So that's a different kind of fudging. I don't know how to describe that fudging. That is that's an interesting. That's a kind of a different fudging. I think that fudging is when I think of like hard fudging, I think of, the mechanic resulted the mechanic resulted in an outcome and you're changing that outcome. This is more, what you're describing is more of a, normally I would say that your thing is more of a like a railroading thing, but it's interesting because you're actually, you're like, for example, if you said there's the goblin caves, but they're like, no, we're going into the sewers. And then you're like, okay, but the sewers then lead to the goblin caves, even though they didn't originally. That's a railroad. But what you're describing is even a little bit different than that. You're describing is sort of this like quantum nature. Like you've prepped a dungeon with stats, and you're basically just saying like, no matter where they end up going, I'm going to use this dungeon and these stats. So that's kind of like a weird. It's less of a fudging thing, and it's less of a railroading thing, and it's more of a quantum ogre kind of thing, kind of. So that's actually an interesting perspective there. Cybersmith coming in with £20 all the way from 2025 over there in the UK. Significance of morals, alignments, edicts, anathemas, in my opinion, depends on the benefit dishonor has. Crunchier systems do it better, in my opinion. Attack a naked enemy in bed in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, +6 or more. Auto crit, very strong in D&D 5e, merely advantage. Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole idea, I mean, D&D has never really been really good, especially in the modern editions, of making like chaotic necessarily like a bad thing, or like an evil thing. But like, you know, I would argue that if you're attacking an enemy naked in bed in most games, I wouldn't even ask for you to roll a die roll. I would kind of just say that you kill them and murder them. But to your point, that is an advantage for being sort of dishonorable. It's an advantage to, you know, to ambushing people. So like, and, you know, going back to first edition D&D, right? Ambushing was a huge way, an awesome way to, and I'm sure a lot of groups got into fights about this. Ambushing was a great way to get an advantage, right? Combat is war, and, you know, surprise them. And you might have a lawful character who keeps ambushing goblins along the road, and the GM says, look, I don't know if that's chaotic, but it definitely doesn't feel lawful. And so your character might have a penalty and an effect for that. Now, of course, the disadvantage, the question is, should it be balanced by an advantage? In other words, should you get some benefit for being so noble? Should you get some benefit for being so good? Some people think that if you reward being good and being noble, that you're sort of discrediting it, right? And that the whole idea is that it should be not rewarding. That's what makes it the better moral choice. And some people feel like if you reward people for being good, that you are cheapening it in some ways. I myself am sort of torn on that. I could actually see, I'm kind of, you know, I could go either way on that respect. So that's very interesting. Thank you, Cybersmith, for that. And Happy New Year to you. Let's see what's going on here. We got a lot of stuff here. Self-confessing. Mark, 20 lessons drive to work episodes. There you go. There's a lot of them. You can one episode for each one. So there you go. Fantastic. Dr. Urias says we should rethink the Pathfinder 2 remastered Alchemist. What, you think too high, too low? Yeah, 4E had a pretty good alignment system. To be fair, it wasn't good only. It was actually, number one, the core alignment was neutral. D&D has this crazy weird thing about neutral. Like, I did something good, so now I have to do something bad. 4th edition got rid of neutral. 4th edition just called it unaligned. And it actually said the vast majority of people, including heroes, are unaligned. It means that they haven't taken any sort of particular moral stance for or against good or evil. So and you could be unaligned and just like, I still do, you know, I'm still a hero. I still do the right thing, but I'm not doing it because I'm like battling for the forces of good. So number one, in 4th edition, neutral became unaligned. And then you only had one axis. If you went to the left, you went unaligned, good, lawful good. And on the evil, you went unaligned, evil, chaotic evil. That was it. There were only 5 alignments in 4th edition. And the middle one, unaligned, was basically like a null, right? It was an NA. And then you had good, evil, and then you had lawful good, chaotic evil. That was it. Those were the only alignments. And honestly, I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, but I won't get into that. Dan says I am his most watched channel. Well, that's not hard to do when in a month I usually produce more hours of content than most channels do in an entire year. So I don't know if that should be that surprising, but I'm glad you're watching. I appreciate that. what are the top 5 board games you want to play next year that are new or that I haven't played or that like I want to play? I want to play more Arcs, and I want to get the I want to play the Arcs campaign, which I have not played yet. Let's see what else. So Arcs. I actually have not played Arc Nova, and I think I want to play Arc Nova. I want to play more Oath. So I mean these are leader games, but so Arcs plus Arcs campaign, Oath, Arc Nova. I still feel like there's more to Terraforming Mars. I haven't played a lot of the expansions, and I still think that game's really cool. Oh, and then there's like an expansion to an expansion to an expansion to an alternate version of the game, right? So there's Dune, the original Dune, which I love, but a lot of people don't like for obvious reasons. And then they made this game called Dune Imperium, which I own. I've read through it, but I've never played it. But then they made an expansion to it. And they made an expansion to the expansion, but it's actually a separate game called Dune Imperium Uprising. And I've heard it's way better. So I'm curious about checking that one out as well. Yeah. And in theory, in 2025, I should be getting the new Root expansion that I kickstarted, and I should be getting the new Oath expansion, which I kickstarted. So that those will definitely be on the list. Hopefully they come in 2025. I actually don't know. All right, we're getting back up to the mechanized fudging. Daggerheart made me question mechanized fudging in general. What is mechanized fudging? Well, I'm sure people explain that to you. Let's see here. Well, resisting in Blades of the Dark means that you don't have to fudge. The player can fudge for themselves. Time for more Mario Kart and wine. The only way to drunk drive, Bob. All right, Bob, take care. Let's see here. Just trying to catch up. All right. I got a lot of stuff here. I have not actually played Wingspan or Wormspan, so I haven't played any of the Span games. So anyways, so looks like I'm mostly caught up. Sorry if I missed somebody's chat or something like that. If you want to call something out that I missed, please feel free to do so. But the long and the short of it is, I like games to have rules, and I like for everybody to follow those rules. And as I've said many times, I don't think the GM is above the rules. So to that end, I don't think that fun is a valid game design target. I think, and I believe that there's something to be said about the integrity of the game. So, I mean, ultimately, on a very philosophical point of view, perhaps, what Lord High Summoner and the fudging people are getting into is sort of the question of, if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's around to hear it, did it make a sound, right? If the GM fudges and nobody knows that they did, doesn't matter. Is it still fudging? And, I'm of the belief that the tree falling in the woods does make a sound, whether there's a person there to hear it or not. And obviously some people feel differently. So, I'm not saying that they're wrong to do that. I'm just saying that for me personally, I don't view that as a valid tool. I also view it as an unnecessary tool, because if I want something, I won't roll the dice. I just wouldn't roll the dice. Like, it might be weird coming out of left field, but like if we're playing 5e D&D or something like that, where there's no such mechanism, and the player goes, I'm going to jump over the fiery chasm, and I'm thinking, well, if they fail the roll, like in D&D terms, they're going to fall into the middle of the fiery chasm and burn to death. And I'm just going to basically, like, I might just tell them straight up. I'll be like, yeah, you leap through the air and get to the other side, and then you're charging towards the evil necromancer on top of the dark altar. And you're like, cool. Like, if I don't want to, if I'm going to make my player roll that, and then if they fail the roll, I don't know, come up with some bullshit reason why the DC was actually 4. Like, I would never be in that situation to begin with. If I have a bigger problem with that, well, then you should just redefine what failure and success means in a D20 system. So, for example, I might say, you're gonna jump. Okay, well, then what we're gonna do is, if you make it, you jump across the cliff and you're fine. If you fail, all right, then you don't make it all the way. You get to the other side and you're clinging to the other edge. But I'm not gonna let your character just die here in the fire. Are we good with that? But again, now we're getting into this weird spot, because now what I'm actually starting to talk about are game mechanics that things like Torchbearer and Powered by the Apocalypse and stuff like that actually added to the game, because they're like, well, technically in D&D, the rule is you jump this far, and if you don't jump far enough, you fall into the pit and die. And I agree with that to a certain extent. And if we've agreed to play, that's why I said it would be very weird if you just started doing that in the middle of a D20 game randomly out of nowhere, because now you're cheating. And the problem is GMs do want to do that, but they don't want to just violate the rules of the game, so they just do it secretly behind the screen. And the problem here is just that you're just playing the wrong game system, because there are game systems where that is what you get to do, but you don't have to cheat. And nobody's feeling like you're betraying the game system by doing that. If we're playing Powered by the Apocalypse, we're playing Dungeon World, and your character leaps over the flaming pit to get to the other side, and I call for a defy danger roll, and you balls it and get a 6-, well, then I get to make as hard of a move as I want. And sure, I could say that you fall into the pit of lava and die. That could have been a potential stake of the consequence. However, I have an agenda, which is to be a fan of the players. I have an agenda, which is to fill their lives with danger and excitement. And, I have these kind of core ethical responsibilities as a game master. So when I think to make a hard move, I'm going to think more of, one hand grasping on the other end, Sam and Frodo dangling over the pit of doom, right? I'm not going to think, oh, you unceremoniously leap across and then you're not even close. It's like a scene in a movie where like you see the car and they're like, we're going to make it. And then you show the wide shot and like the car's not even halfway across the ravine and it just falls in and everybody dies. Arguably, the problem is that when you play a game like D&D, that is exactly what can and will happen, right? Your players will just do something, roll kind of low, not even like nat 1, just kind of low, and then you fall on the ground and you fall into the pit and die. You fall in the pit of lava and die. And that's the end of your story. That's the end of your character arc. That's the end of the cool revenge thing. None of that. You roll. Oh, sorry, there was about a 40% chance there that you were going to roll below an 8, and you did, and so your character's in the lava and you're dead. All your stuff burns up and you sink to the bottom of the ground. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. That is the game that D&D is. But when you think about the people who are playing D&D nowadays, when you think about these TV shows or whatever they're called, actual play shows that are playing D&D, when you think about all these people signing up, sit up to play in their D&D games, that is not what they are expecting. That's not what they are imagining. But that is the game that you're playing. And I think people have a problem with that. And that's okay that they have a problem with that. The solution, however, isn't to just cheat and make the numbers up. It's to play in a game that says we accept that these arbitrary random outcomes do not generate a result that is commensurate with the expectation that we have from a narrative point of view. Am I wrong to assume old school D&D players wouldn't try this jump because they can die? Stan, not so saint. Hard for me to answer. I think there's just because you're an old school D&D player doesn't mean that you don't want to you don't care about your character dying. But to a certain extent, I think yes. I think in almost any circumstance, if you were to take some new modern gamer who's playing in a 5e campaign and their character's running across the battlefield and they're going to leap over the flaming pit of lava to engage with the evil necromancer, I think the general feeling of like everyone at that table, or at least certainly that player, is like the idea of, but I could roll kind of low and fall into the lava and die. Does not even enter into their mind. I really don't think that it is even a possibility. And I think that's why if it does happen, they're immediately on Reddit, you know, complaining. I can't believe we were playing this campaign. I had this cool character. He had this amazing backstory, and he was trying to get revenge, and then he fell into the lava and died. And it's like, what the hell, man? So that's kind of like a weird thing. I've actually seen this argument. I don't remember where it was. Oh, man. I don't know if I saved it. But somebody was like really mad because they did something like that. It wasn't jumping over a flaming lava pit. I don't remember what it was, but let's just pretend it was. It wasn't that. But basically, they jumped over the lava pit, and they fell, and they died. And they were really upset because, and they said, they were like, this is bullshit. I just, you know, why wasn't my GM fudging? Right? Like, the GM is there to make sure that that stuff doesn't happen to me. That, like, that blew my mind. Here you had a GM who wasn't fudging, but you had a player who was like counting on them fudging. They're not going to just let me fall into the lava and die. And they did. Again, it wasn't actually lava and dying, but you know, to use kind of to paraphrase it here. That is freaking wild. Yeah. That is some title. Yeah. Yeah. So that was like a huge thing for me. And believe it or not, this person did not get downvoted into oblivion. You know, there were a lot of people who were kind of like, yeah, like that was kind of shitty of your GM. I was like, wow, okay. You know, different cultures, different folks, you know, exactly. Look at Ryutama, you know, the Ryujin, you know, they're more okay. And they expect a sort of railroaded experience. And, you know, maybe that is more and more what people, which is fine, by the way. That is fine. But when you look at the rules and the way that Ryutama works, there's literally one of the GM Ryutama powers that they can take, the Ryujin power that you can take as a GM that like basically says you are, you know, and the players know that, okay, he's got these 3 GM abilities, and one of them is he can change the result of any roll, right? Like, so they know that they're signing up for it. The problem is that the D&D is not that game, you know. It's very weird, you know. Now, Woodland Fellowship, it's a great point. You know, I've said this before, kind of jokingly, but kind of not so jokingly. If a GM ever says to you, you know, you're like, you know, you're describing like something, you know, like a huge boulder is falling or the wall is collapsing or something, maybe it's not even something, you know, you're like, there's a sudden dark surge of energy. And the player goes, and the GM goes like, make a fortitude save or make an athletics check. And the player goes like, what happens if I fail? And the GM goes, you don't even want to know. If they ever say that to you, don't worry, you're not going to fail. Because like the GM, once the GM speaks a consequence into life, if you do fail the roll, now they have to be held to it. They're only doing it for theatrics. They're doing it just to make you feel something through obfuscation. And again, maybe some people think that is okay. And I do not. Because absolutely, you know, as I said before, in Torchbearer, there's this kind of interesting, weird, it's not like Fabula Ultima, where you can choose to surrender at any time. And so you only die if you choose to sacrifice. But in Torchbearer, your death will always come because you choose to die. And what I mean by that is, if your character has a condition like injured, like normally nothing can kill you. A failed roll cannot kill you in Torchbearer. Unless your character has accumulated an injured condition or sick condition. Then the GM has the obligation to tell you when you go to make a check, and they don't have to, but if it fits the fiction, they might say, hey, you're injured. If you go to jump this cliff and fail, death is on the line. And then the player makes their choice. And they might decide that it is worth the risk of dying in order to accomplish their character's goal, right? Because they're fighting for what they believe in, right? Their instincts are guiding them, right? They have a creed that they want to uphold. They have a goal, a belief that is worth fighting and dying for. And they will make that risk. And they could fail that roll. And you say, and the objective is 3. You need to get 3 successes out of your D6s. And they roll the dice, and it comes up 2. And that's it. That was all your character. That's all it wrote. Mark the dead condition. You're dead. But the player at that point is very much fully bought in to that decision, right? And I think that that is fucking awesome, because the only thing cooler, like the only thing cooler than a character succeeding is a character dying and the player being completely at peace with it because they understood that they made that choice. And the dice didn't come up their way, but they had all the information. Everything was presented to them. They made the choice. They decided, for my character, for me as a player, for my character, this is worth dying for. And I'm going to make that roll. And I'm accepting the fact that there's a % chance that I will fail, and that I know it's not like, well, maybe I'll just fail. No, I know that the result of a failed roll here will be death. There's no ambiguity about it, right? Because sometimes as a player, you're like, well, I don't know, and then the GM says, well, I guess you die, and you're like, well, I didn't know that was the thing. No, we've made it very clear: success or death. Now, Torchbearer is set up in such a way that those kind of decisions don't come up automatically. They only come up after your character has been ground down and has accumulated a bunch of different conditions, which have come from other previous failures, right? So you've put yourself in that situation. And that is an awesome thing, because when the player does hit that success, holy shitballs, that is a great feeling, right? But on the other hand, when they roll low and they don't succeed, there's this sort of like, almost like Bushido Buddhist-like acceptance of just, well, now we know what my character would die for, and it was this. This was worth it to them. Now, of course, you might have a crazy player who, plays things like, that it's, you're going off the wild track, but, that's okay. That's what their character's a wild person. Their character will die for almost anything. Okay, great. Well, they're going to play it fast and loose. But there's other people who might hold their characters' lives a little bit more dearly. But then when you put this on the line and say, are you willing, ultimately Torchbearer is a game that cares about your character's beliefs, instincts, and goals. They call them the bigs. What's your character's big belief, instinct, goal? And the way that the game rewards you is by fighting for and trying to accomplish your goals, and by living up to and pursuing your beliefs, and by following your instincts. And so ultimately you could choose not to do those things and you would not be rewarded, which is fine. But it's also a way for us to truly, understand your character. And so when somebody steps up and they said, yes, I understand death's on the line, but this is my character's goal, and this is, they believe in this and they think this is the right thing to do, and they're going to do it, then cool. We've learned something about your character that we otherwise wouldn't have learned. So I think those moments are made very powerful, because everyone there knows there is no, you're not working with a safety net, kind of a tangent here, but I've often thought about this in terms of like high wire performers, okay? Trapeze artists or the like. And there's this idea that, right, working without a net. So you're a tightrope walker, you're a trapeze artist, and there's no net. So if the person fails, they're going to die or potentially be severely injured. And I've often thought about that as being like this idea being that it is somehow more exciting when the person could die. But I also see the point of view which says that it is irresponsible of the performer, of the circus, of the whatever, to potentially put their audience in a place where they would have to see that, right? And so, there's kind of this interesting, and this is one of the reasons why maybe I don't think the D&D rule set is that great, because I think the D&D rule set is one that promises a trapeze act, right? But is one where the rules, you're operating without a net. And occasionally the trapeze artist is going to miss their thing and they're going to fall, and you're going to have to sit there with your 3-year-old, and your 7-year-old is, the pretty swirling, twirling, sparkly princess falls 75 feet through the air, hits the ground, dies in front of everybody. Like, you didn't come to the circus expecting to see that shit, right? And you're kind of almost like upset, but at the same time, you were like, oh, they're operating without a net. This is so exciting. So it's kind of this weird, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you show them the net, then they're going to be like, well, it's fine, whatever. But they had a net. You know, like this is why it's impossible to please people, right? Like they'll casually dismiss it, or they'll even say, I mean, it was fine, but you know, they were operating with a net, so like anybody could do it. I could do it, you know. So there's this kind of weird, you know, and so what I think a lot of GMs have figured out is the cheat is to make people think there's no net, but there is. But in that case, it's still not completely analogous, because if you didn't think there was a net, but there was secretly a net, right? Like maybe it's like really fine thread, but it's like super high tensile strength, right? Or maybe there's like an emergency deploying airbag or something. If they did fall, so if everything goes according to plan, they have an amazing act and it's like there was no net, and you get the sensation of, wow, they were operating without a net. But if they did fall and the net deployed or the airbag deployed and they got saved, you would be like, oh my God, that was terrifying. Oh, thank God there was a net. Thank God there was an airbag there to save them from splattering onto the floor. These people are so good. They were so smart of them. But the audience still knows that at the end of the day, there was a safety mechanism in place. They didn't know in the beginning, but they knew it at the end. What we're implying with D&D is a safety mechanism that the players were never even aware of existing at all. So it's like really the ultimate form of obfuscation. And I don't know. I just don't feel. I personally don't feel good about it. But, anyways, Derek does not play with a net. No, I do not. Which isn't to say that I'm not, like, again, it depends on the tone and the style of the game. You know, like when I play, like I said, PBTA games, I'm not trying to kill your characters. I'm trying to, you know, introduce more problems. I'm introducing more issues. But that's what my agenda as a game master is, and that's what the rules of the game give me the power to do. So I think that's why that's so important. Agreed. There's a lot of issues happen when there's a disconnect in fiction and misunderstanding consequences. That's number one. But I'll also turn two times to Stephen. I think a lot of GMs purposefully avoid talking about consequences because they want to be able to have the fluidity to express those consequences if the roll goes bad. It's a way of sort of ensuring the story, or ensuring the character's, you know, survival, or success in the case that the random rolls generate something that they don't find to be pleasing. Let's see here. Right. Consequences very much matter, Stephen. You know, we're big fans of Fabula Ultima here. Actually, Emmanuel Galetto, the author of Fabula Ultima, is a member of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon. But yeah, like you're not saying that there's no consequences. You're just saying that you can't die. That's a difference of things. Yeah. I don't view that as fudging. It's very clearly what's going on. That's a good story. In the very, very early New Dawn, that's a play-by-post Pathfinder 2 game. Edril, I think the second or third longest member of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon. Edril's character decided to merely witness like a PL +7 creature pass by, and Gid, one of our members, also glaring at death, was like, bud, you're gonna have to roll a nat 20 to not die. And he was like, I know, it's okay. And he rolled a nat 20. Oh, that's awesome. Locanor, a happy new year to you. Irish, yes, here live. Great to have you. Happy new year to you. It's an egregiously Edril thing to do. I love Edril. Stephen, yes, I missed your takes, buddy. And that's my point. It is a game. It's not just storytelling. The storytelling element, I think, comes secondary to the game. The game is a mechanism that we follow procedurally to generate unexpected outcomes that we as a group, the GM and the players, then convert into a story. So the game exists and it has its idiosyncrasies and it has its complexities and it has its metacurrencies and it has its failures and all of this other stuff, right? So that we don't just get to simply tell a story, right? It challenges us. It forces us into an uncomfortable place where we're forced to be creative. We're forced to strain our brains to come up with something that makes sense, right? I mean, this is the same basic principle, by the way, of most storytelling games. And I don't mean like RPGs. I mean like those games that you see at the store, you know, like Target or whatever, like the story dice game. Like you, me, a couple of people, we could all sit around and tell a story. You know, we used to do this when we were camping, you know, when we were younger and we were drinking or whatever. You know, I would start telling a story and, you know, you'd talk for a little while and then you'd like end and you pass the story off to somebody else. And they had to keep telling the story. And of course, we usually make it silly and lewd and funny or whatever. But you have these story games, but that's not a game. That's an activity. That's just a pastime. The game is like where you have the story dice. And, you know, when you pass the story to somebody else, they have to roll the dice cubes and it comes up with like something and something. And now they have to say, we are now constrained by these symbols that we, you know, generated from these dice. I now have to take this existing fiction. And because of these random dice, I now have to incorporate a betrayal into the story, right? None of us were going to add betrayal. None of us were even thinking about betrayal, but we rolled the dice. They say betrayal, and that's the point of the game. The game is not to be like, oh, but betrayal just doesn't work for the story that we've established, and it doesn't really fit my character. That's not a game. I don't even know what that is. It's something I don't enjoy. Maybe you enjoy it. It is not something that I enjoy. I definitely don't think it's a game. Whether it's enjoyable or not, I leave to you. But what is a game is where you go, I was never thinking about my character being someone who would betray someone. But now this random die says that my character is going to betray somebody. So now it is up to me to figure out how to make that work within the context of the fiction. And to figure out what is the motivation that would cause my character to betray someone, and then to be challenged to make that happen. And I might have to really think hard and how to make that believable and have fun with it. And this was an unexpected direction, not at all what I expected. And that's why we play games, because we want those unexpected, you know, mechanics. So, and again, this is talking about like a story dice game, right? Where you're just telling a story, but I'm sort of using it as an analog to RPGs. I mean, you're not completely wrong here, Beowulf, which is part of the fun of playing a game like an RPG is if you do, quote unquote, die, it's not traumatic, or at least it's not supposed to be traumatic because no one actually died. It was just a make-believe game, and as opposed to the real life of working a trapeze act without a net. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who act as if it is a great tragedy and a great crime. I'll never forget, you know, I was kind of trying to watch Campaign 3 for Critical Role, and when early in the campaign where like 2 characters died and like people were losing their shit over the fact that they just felt like so betrayed that these characters died. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Let's see here. Ikemo says, regarding the trapeze net thing, I've often heard GMing compared to a magician's act. Oh, there's an expectation of being deceived on the player side that's kind of tricky to navigate around. Interesting. Does anybody else feel like that? Like, do you think there's an expectation as a player that the GM is going to deceive you? Poll in chat. That is accurate, Ian Ryder. Ian Ryder. Not only do I not play with a net, my players know they are over a pit of spikes with sharks. Pat Beowulf says, in my Pendragon game the other day, my character got dropped by archers, and it looks like he's probably going to die. The GM tried to re-roll it because he felt bad. He said he didn't mean to roll that second arrow, but I wouldn't let him. The roll is the roll. If I die, I die. To play a character saved by Deus Ex Machina cheapens everything. Certainly, there's a very committed way of thinking about it. Allison says, yeah, at the table I play, we don't do character death. I get too attached, but we have discussed other consequences if something goes really wrong. And I think that's totally fair and valid too. Because the stakes don't always have to be your character's life. I agree. Edril is best. I stopped watching Critical Role because not enough characters die. Vin says, I very much don't like Magician Act GMing as a thing. It became prominent when fudging as the norm became more popularized. Shouldn't have put maybe in there. It's got to be all maybes. Well, we'll see. We'll see, Christoph. We'll give another couple seconds here. We got 37 votes. Hypothesis. A game requires some degree of surrender of control. Yes or no? I'm trying to think. No, chess is a game. You don't surrender control. I mean, you don't control what your opponent does, I guess, but you have complete autonomy over what all of your pieces do at all times. And chess is definitely a game. A game with random dice and random cards? Absolutely. Absolutely. Roll for combat. We do all of our rolls out in the open and everyone knows the stakes. London says, I vote no because all my GMs are from the KOLC. Neutromancer says I choose a fourth option. If you can't die, then surviving means nothing. Voy, happy New Year. Oh, you're already there. Well, we've got about 3 hours to go here. All right, I'm going to end the poll. We had 42 votes. That's enough. So the final results of the poll is that 45% of you said, again, the question is, do you think there's an expectation as a player that the GM is going to deceive you? 45% of you said no. 28% maybe, 26% yes. So almost 50% said no, and then the remaining 50% was pretty split between maybe and yes. So that's very interesting. I started to teach TTRPG to my sons and nephews. In other words, I've started to teach them to die in TTRPGs. Important lessons to play better. I mean, it depends on how you view RPGs. I've talked about this before as well. There's two ways of viewing RPGs. I mean, there's more than two ways, but two kind of axes. One is to view RPGs as a game of competition, where the players, you are challenging the players. You are challenging the player characters. Can you succeed? Right? So the idea, you're asking, the assumption is that they won't. But if they play well and they make good decisions and they, roll and they're maybe a little bit lucky, or they know when to hold them, know when to fold them, that they will succeed. So the game is set up as a challenge, as a gauntlet, right? The other way to view RPGs is a game of cooperation, where it's not about will you succeed? It's a question of how will you succeed? What sacrifices will you have to make? And what journeys will you overcome? And there's kind of two kind of ways of thinking about that. So I think that like this idea of like get good, play better works really well in a game that is set up as a competition. And I don't want to poo-poo on RPGs as a competition, because I mean that's what the root of the hobby it was this idea that it was coming out of wargaming, and that you were trying to beat the GM's dungeon. They were they had this is one of the reasons why DMing had this kind of like mystique about it, because on one hand you were supposed to be you were supposed to be impartial, unbiased, but on the other hand you were also supposed to be the opposition. And so the idea was that like in designing the dungeon, you were designing it to be this killer experience, this challenge that was like, it wasn't supposed to be like, well, let's see our balance of the player always win. Like that wasn't your objective. Your objective was to legitimately challenge the players. But then when you ran the game, your goal was to be fair and unbalanced or unbiased. Maybe you're also maybe you're also imbalanced. I don't know. see here. Absolutely. PCs can fail without dying, although it is kind of tough sometimes in trad 20 D&D games, I find. The game doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room in certain things. Ben, howdy. I'm surprised you're not New Year's Eving it up. You're over there in New York. Aren't you the New Year's Eve capital of the world or something? I cannot endorse Conan 2D20. That was really early in the 2D20 system. I think that like sword and sorcery games need to almost be very like lightweight. I think 2D20 is too heavy. And again, I think they were still trying to figure it out. And I just don't think that the 2D20 system for like a Conan game really makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know. I'm very torn about it. I mean, I've never played it, obviously. I read it, but I was not a huge fan of it. I was one of the people who was not a huge fan of it. The PF1E starter set ended with the characters facing a level 5 black dragon. The book said the dragon flies away after a round of combat. I hated that. I made a point of killing them if they kept fighting it. Fair enough. Krister, I've pampered my players for so many years. It'd be difficult to put death on the table at this point, but I would like to. Yeah, players are creatures of habit. They certainly, they learn, what gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated, but also what gets repeated gets repeated. I mean, if you've learned how to do it, that's how you're going to keep doing it, right? Like it's almost Pavlovian in this respect. But again, the challenge of, and this is something that another thing that people will discuss, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with, is they'll basically say like, well, if you can't die, then the game is pointless and it has no meaning. And I disagree. On the other hand, if the game has no stakes, then I agree with you that it is kind of a pointless exercise. But the only thing doesn't have to be death, right? That doesn't have to be the only potential thing that could occur to you. There could be other consequences that just aren't death. Speaking of CR, if it's balanced, what % chance should there be for a PC to die, and what % chance for a retreat fail, and what % chance for a TPK? That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that, because if it's too high, it's obviously problematic. And if it's too low, then it's also problematic, because not only if it's too low, it could be so low as to be pointless, but it's also, if it's too low, then it becomes too rare an event. I mean, again, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I think games like Strike, right, or Torchbearer have a more interesting way of doing it, because they separate the results of the combat from the character's actual state of being, which basically means you can lose a combat, but not everyone be dead. So then you can make the combats tougher, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the characters are going to end up dead. And I think that is kind of important. Yeah. Jackal is here. It says non-binary combat resolution for the win. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like let me give you an example of what I mean. This is going to sound very strange, okay? And I get it. People are going to think this is very weird. Imagine that the party has a fight against, some minions, right? Like there's a bunch of them. In a non-binary combat resolution outcome, the players could lose the fight and lose the conflict, lose the challenge. And the result in the fiction is all the minions are dead. But you guys are kind of battered up, or you spent more ammo than you thought you were going to spend, or the alarm has been triggered, or the countdown to the self-destruct sequence has been initiated, or the ship is evacuating, or the princess is now in another castle. Fictionally, mechanically, the players lost the combat, but the fiction is that they killed these minions because, of course, they did. The problem is that by losing the combat, they took more consequences than they would have otherwise. Because if they had beaten the combat, then it would have just been like, they rolled in, they went full Matrix mode on them. It was like a bunch of, kung fu, wire fu acts, just everybody being a badass, and they didn't stand a chance, and you cut them down like a scythe through wheat, and it was awesome, and everybody looked awesome. And then we move on, and they're like, there are no consequences. So what we're saying is that fictionally, they are going to die, but there's still the question of consequences. And that's where this idea of, is death the only meaningful consequence? Is death even a good consequence? Stephen says death is often the least interesting consequence, and I kind of tend to agree. The problem with CR systems is that it's zero sum, regardless of the actual numbers. And Ben, I also agree. Whether the CR is low or it's high, you're still essentially saying that there are basically two outcomes. One where everybody's fine, maybe they're a bit beat up, or somebody died, or everybody died, I guess. So I guess maybe there are kind of three outcomes, but basically death or no death. And you playing around with that, it's like, I don't know. I mean, the thing about that is, in some ways, Beowulf, that's like almost worse to me. These percentages that you're actually coming up with. Because it means that, like, when something bad does happen, it was like a black swan event. And realistically, I should never expect it to happen. And then if it does happen, it's just going to feel worse because I know that it was such a rarity and I just got completely fucked by randomness. And I don't necessarily know that I like that feeling as much, So, I mean, Christoph, I think that's also very difficult to do in D20 as well. Stories are replete with characters who accomplish their goal but die. That's very hard to do in D&D because, like, when you're knocked unconscious or whatever, you're zero. You're laying there unconscious and then you die. There's no one in D&D who is ever dying but still conscious. Right, where the character is like they have suffered a mortal wound. You are not going to make it, right? And yet, they manage to pull through. They manage to do the thing. D&D doesn't really have that option. So, Duncan says this is why Strike is the best. And Jackal says Strike is the best. And I'm not going to get into it. We did a whole video on Strike, but the way Strike works is a little bit different. It gives you these variety of outcomes. Could you make D20 games have a more non-binary outcomes if you change the goals of the combat test? Like maybe taking an objective or holding points in the field for a certain amount of time important. Mind blown, absolutely. You could absolutely do it. But understand, mind blown, that if you're doing that, you are abstracting, right? Because one of the things that Trad 20 does is it makes a 1-to-1 ratio between what's happening in the combat and what's happening in quote unquote characters real in the fiction. The mechanics and the fiction are kind of in a 1-to-1 lock. But like, so to use this example, mind blown. Let's say you had a combat. There's a bunch of monsters on one side, the players are on the other side, and you have 4, or maybe 3 control points. Okay? Or 4 control points or something. 5 control points are on the battlefield. And at the end of the combat round, if one side has 3 people, okay, on the control points, all right, their side wins the fight. And the outcome of the actual combat, who lives, who dies, who flees, whatever, will be decided once we figure that out. But now you've created this abstraction, right? Now what's happening in the battle, the mechanics of the battlefield might not necessarily translate to what's going on in the fiction, and a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, have real problems with that. They have real problems with this. So that is the downside. What do you think of last stand rules in games? E.g., you stand back up and keep fighting but die after the encounter. I think they're great. I think they're pretty cool. MCDM, draw steel. I don't know what the current version of that rule is, but I thought it was a really cool rule that they put in. I mean, it is effectively what I was describing as happening in Torchbearer, right? Where you are basically saying, this is something that I care enough about that I'm willing to die to make sure, or to at least try to succeed. And there is no better way of showing you what my character believes in and what my character is about than making that choice to engage that last stand rule to, quote unquote, get back up. I mean, Fabula Ultima kind of shortcuts it when you do the sacrifice and just says, you're going to die, but you get to go do this awesome thing. And it kind of just abstracts it. Whereas like draw steel is like, okay, you got to keep playing the game. But like, I mean, you might last stand and then still fail because, it's too difficult. So, Fabula Ultima kind of shortcuts that, because that way, if your character does go out, you definitely guarantee that your character goes out in kind of a cool, successful, heroic way. Unfortunately, your character could be like, I'm going to last stand, guaranteeing my character's death, but I'm going to keep fighting. And oh shit, I missed all my attacks and I actually did nothing. And so my character died for nothing. I mean, part of that is kind of the funniness and ironic part about RPGs, but I think it's a cool mechanic. I'm a big fan. No, you cannot. Very difficult to do. Yeah, exactly. Draw steel. We were just talking about that. Yes, exactly. Exactly, Kalana. Yeah, 4E gamified the game. But, I'd say Strike, which is, he was definitely inspired by 4E, big time, takes it even a step further. 9 Lives Till Valhalla has something similar to Last Stand. If you run out of lives, you could petition the gods to survive until your goal is reached that session, and then you pass on. That's also excellent, right? I mean, again, talk about fighting for what you believe in, right? Very Burning Wheel-esque, right, Ben? Yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome. Again, part of the reason I play RPGs, a big part of the reason I play RPGs is I want to see what, it's one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to games like Mouse Guard and Torchbearer and, in theory, Burning Wheel, is I really just like understanding like what your character will fight for, and what sacrifices will they make? What sacrifices won't they make? I think that's really interesting. Stories are okay. I mean, I like the stories, but for me, the story comes after. The story comes in the retelling of the session. Not during the session as much. I'm really all about creating these intense moments where you have to make a decision, and we get to see your character. And I've said this a million times, but like the classic example, which I've used a million times, is in Mouse Guard, the example where the Mouse Guard, who is, ostensibly, a noble servant of the Mouse realms, is being sent, and his brother comes with him to deliver some much needed medicine to a small town on the other side of the Mouse territories, and they have to cross a river, and the character fails their role, and the GM says, your boat collapses, your leaf and twig boat collapses, and you're swept into the rampaging river, and because you failed, your medicine and the bundle of medicine is being swept downstream, and your brother is being swept downstream. You get to pick one, save one. Do you save your brother NPC, or do you essentially maybe condemn this town of complete strangers to death? It's not like you're killing them exactly. They got sick, but you do have the medicine, so maybe you are. It's kind of trolley problems, right? Maybe I'm cruel. I like throwing people trolley problems basically, and seeing how we get there. But what the best trolley problems occur is when, number one, the player's actions lead them to that situation, and better is when dice are involved, because then it's like no one's fault. There's fate. I'm sorry that you're in this position, but the dice rolled low. But now that you're here, all right, Sketchosaurus Rex. All right, pull. All right, your boat collapses. Your brother and the medicine are being swept downstream. Which do you save? All right. Poll. This is the most important poll of all time. And of course, this is what's to me, this is very interesting. And there is no right answer. And here's the best part: is it's a game. So no, we don't actually have to kill people to do this. You know what I mean? No. This is in game. You're playing mouse guard. You're a mouse. You're sworn to the guard, and you're tasked with delivering medicine to a remote village on the other side of the mouse territories. Right. And then of course we can twist the knife a little bit, right? We can say that they were told not to build a community there because it was too far away or something like that, right? So there's even this question of but as a mouse guard, you're sworn to do this right duty. But at the same time, these people, they mean nothing to you. You've never met them. Maybe they were even kind of assholes, No, not your. No, I'm not saying. But you know what? The fact that here's the thing: in real life, I mean, I don't know how many people out there are as that moral, or even for the religious amongst us, who's so moral that they would choose a village of strangers. And by the way, you're not condemning them to certain death, but certainly the medicine is going to save folks. And if they don't get the medicine, some people are going to die, right? But how many people in real life would ever choose the random stranger village over their brother or their sister or their child? The answer is very few. And in real life, I think most of us are okay with that decision. But that's the type of people that most of us are. RPGs give us this unique ability to make that kind of horrible choice that in real life we would probably never be able to do. And maybe we like to think that we would put the greater good over our own personal, family or something like that. But that's not the way most people work. And that's why we look up to these heroes who can, make this stuff up. Mindblood says, my brother can swim. If he can't, it's a skill issue. Well, the idea is that it's a rampaging river or something like that. But, so it's very interesting here. Let's just see what we got here. So Sketchosaurus says, F them, I'm saving my brother. Jackal says, is this like Bob's brother in Root? Jackal, it's exactly like Bob's brother in Root. In fact, again, everything there was no plan. I didn't even remotely know that was where they were going to go and how that was going to end up happening. But once I saw this possible thread line, I immediately was like, I want to give Bob the brother. I want to give Bob the mouse guard dilemma and see what Bob does. And for those of you who haven't watched our Root actual play, I don't want to give too much away, but I basically put Bob in this situation, and he answered in a very Bob way. Christoph says, I'm way too utilitarian not to save the medicine. He knew what he signed up for. Is my brother a paladin? Is he going to disown me if I save him? Oh, that's interesting. Brother, someone can always make more medicine. To be honest, I probably pushed my brother overboard. When it comes to trolley problems, I'm in the camp of Joel did absolutely nothing wrong. From the Last of Us, I assume. Can always get more medicine, though I regret any who die while we double back to get more. And that's a great point, right? Which is, This doesn't mean, this is the best part about this kind of decision and this failure. The game isn't over, right? There are just consequences and new challenges that now you have to, now you double down. Now it's even worse, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And you end up in this crazy new situation that you may never have expected to be in before. All right, final results. 66% of you, sorry, 65% of you, so 2/3 of you said that you would save your brother. 1/3 of you said that you would save the medicine. As a player, I would save my brother. As a player character, I would save the medicine. And that makes total sense, right? And that's what I'm saying. As a player character, we get to make decisions that in real life we may never be capable of making. And again, that doesn't mean that the game is over. It just means, you know, we have this new situation that emerges from this. The bro dies. What medicine? In Mouse Guard, you're a soldier for the order. Going against the order is not acceptable behavior. But I mean, I think that is, you know, but that's what's fun about the game. You know, like it's the same thing with Legend of the Five Rings. You know, even Smith said like he regrets that he made his character too good of a samurai, because in that respect, it became kind of almost not fun. You know, he didn't lean enough into the whole concept of giri and ninjo, and this idea that your character is supposed to be torn between wanting to do what is right and wanting to do what, you know, what they're told is right versus what they know is right, I guess would be kind of the way I would describe it, right? Voy, Happy New Year. Good night. Good night. Karma says, if I can't do both, then clearly I have failed to make my PC good enough. And this is Karama's here, and this is good because we know Karama likes Pathfinder 2 and 4th edition. There are a lot of people and that question is a Mouse Guard question, but that question also relates to, in a sense, to old school D&D and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people who hate making that kind of decision. And I've used this example before. Mouse Guard, or old school D&D, is like the second Batman movie with Christopher Nolan, where the Joker tells him you can save Rachel or you can save Harvey Dent. And Rachel is nobody. I mean, she's some assistant DA, but it's who you love. And Harvey Dent is the shining white knight of Gotham who will, you know, lead the city out of its horror. Who do you save, Batman? And you can only save one. And Batman goes to try to save Rachel because he says, I want to do what's right for me. And of course, Joker pulls the ultimate double fuck you and actually switches the location of the people. All right. Versus, so that's Mouse Guard. That's a horrible decision to make, especially when you're Batman. Are you Batman or are you Bruce Wayne? In the third Batman movie, the original ones from Michael Keaton and then Val Kilmer, the Riddler has a similar situation. He's got Robin and Dr. Meridian Chase, played by Nicole. What's her name? Oh, can't I think of Nicole Kidman? Nicole Kidman is played Dr. Meridian Chase, and he's got both of them in a death trap. And he says, "You have to choose. Are you Bruce Wayne or are you Batman?" Batman would save his little, you know, sidekick, and Bruce Wayne would save the woman of his, you know, the woman he loves. And he goes, now I get to find out the answer to the riddle. And he drops them both. And the idea is that Batman has to choose: do I save, you know, do I be Batman or do I be Bruce Wayne? But in the Batman movie, the original Batman movie, he saves both of them, right? Because that movie is 4E D&D. That movie is Pathfinder 2. That movie is 5E D&D, where people don't want to have to choose. They want to have their cake and they want to eat it too. They want to have built a PC that's strong enough there. It's like, oh, I can only save both. I save both. I can only save one. I save both because I'm that awesome, you know, because I'm this larger than life, super heroic character who doesn't ever have to make tough decisions because he's Batman, because he's the big damn hero. So there's kind of two schools of thought. This is what we call the power fantasy. When people talk about the power fantasy, this is the fundamental core of what I think the power fantasy is. It's that in real life, we have to make horrible decisions all the time. Maybe they're not full on trolley situations, but they're close. Do I uproot my family and move across country to take this job that may pay us more money, but would pull would disrupt our entire lives, our community, our kids would be taken out of their school, miss their friends, we'd be further away from family, but maybe this is the right thing, right? We have to make these horrible decisions in real life all the time. Do I quit my job and go find one that's more fulfilling, but maybe it won't pay as much? Do I buck for this promotion even though I know that I'm going to hate the job, right? There's all these horrible situations that we have to deal with all the time. The last thing that some people want to do is go play a game for fun and have to make the same fucking choices. They want to be like, do I uproot my family and take them across country to get this great job, or do we stay here with our roots? And it's like, I know, I'll find a solution. I'll convince the people that they should let me work from remote, and then I get all the money, but we still stay here in our hometown, and we still get to do this, and I build a bigger house with the money I have, and I save my mother who's getting evicted from her home at the same time, blah, blah, blah. That's like, wow, if only real life was that good. And it's not. So there are some people who play games specifically because they don't want to make those choices. They want to be able to save Robin and the girlfriend. They don't want to have to choose. Choosing is for losers. Choosing is for regular people. And I am not here to be a regular person. I am here to save the day and get the girl and get the applause and still keep my self-respect. Right? Lugs. What's up, Lugs? Hey, Derek, since you're talking about the Batman, Joker, Rachel Harvey choice, what's your take on if a GM did something similar and tricked the players into making the wrong choice? I would avoid it. I would not do that. I do not pull switcheroos on my players like that. Great for a movie, great for a novel. I think it's terrible for an RPG. The same way that a classic thing that you'll see in movies or novels is the heroes go and they do some caper and they risk their lives and they get the suitcase or whatever, the briefcase full of money. And when they bring it back to their hideout, they realize it's been swapped and they got duped and they were betrayed and they didn't actually get it. I really try to avoid the sort of bait and switch type moments in RPGs specifically. I think it could be great for a storyline. And if your players are mature enough, maybe, and you're all very much on that page and you understand that they'd be okay with that. But yeah, I do think that is totally valid. Like, you could do that, of course, and it does happen. I just wouldn't do it because I feel like that's really, not only is it invalidating player agency, you're actually counter-purposing it. Like you are inverting player agency. It's not the GM Gotham needs, but it's the one it deserves. It's the original Captain Kirk's response to the Kobayashi Maru. I don't believe in a no-win situation. And to be fair, Kevin, he thinks he's cheated the Kobayashi Maru because he thinks he's so clever and he gets beamed aboard. But it's like, at the end when he's talking to his son, someone did have to die, right? It just wasn't him. It was Spock. So a price had to be paid. But then but then Star Trek 3 happens and he gets brought back. So it's all good. Happy New Year, Omniscitoad. Good to have you here. But yeah, it's a tough, it's absolutely, it's a tough, loving, both kind of games like that it's tough. It's sometimes you want to have to make the tough choices, and sometimes you're like, I want to kick ass and take names and not have to make any, sacrifices. I don't want to have to make any exceptions. I don't want to, I just want to win, and I win and win. And, we do play different games for different reasons. That's true, Allison. A past GM put us in one of those choose who you rescue death traps. 30 years on, I still think about how my character might have been able to pull it off. What if the players know the villain is a chaotic liar like the Joker? Well, I've told this story before, but the closest exception that the only exception I have to this, I mean, look, none of us are perfect, but I mean, you know, it is the game that it is. We were playing 3rd edition D&D, and we were playing a campaign that was not going well, to be honest with you. It was a overland exploration game, right? A hex crawl game that we affectionately ended up calling the White Binder campaign, because basically the entire campaign was just a series of just random encounter tables that were jammed into this white binder I had. And the players never really seemed to get anywhere or engage with anything. They just had a bunch of random encounters. So the campaign was not doing well. But they were traveling north, and I rolled randomly, and I got a red dragon, like an adult red dragon. And, you know, it flew overhead, and I was like, well, it's a red dragon. And the dragon, I've told the story before, so I'll be brief. But the red dragon, like, landed and, you know, was like, you know, cower before me, and a bunch of characters, like, you know, failed their fear check, so they were like paralyzed with fear anyways. And the dragon was like, you know, he's toying with them. Like, you know, in my mind, he was like a sadistic cat. And there was a raging river nearby, and he cast suggestion. Red dragons could cast suggestion. He cast suggestion on the dwarf. Actually, S.C. Voldo, who was here earlier, his character, he said, you know, jump in the river. And his character was like a dwarf in heavy armor, like he was going to drown. So his character passes the save. And the dragon is like everyone's like, yes, you know, cheering, because like he needed to roll really high to pass the save. So the dragon had 3 suggestions a day. So he used a second suggestion on the dwarf. Rich, my buddy, makes the save again. The players are going ecstatic. 3rd time, the dragon uses suggestion. And, you know, the dragon's getting irritated. Maybe even I'm getting irritated. And he rolls an @20 on the will save, on the suggestion. And everyone's high-fiving and cheering. And I go, I basically go, the dragon eats you. You know, like, I'm like, all right, the dragon attacks. You know, like, he bites you in half. Like, the dragon hit, crit, like, just killed him in, like, one blow. And everyone's like, oh, damn. Like, everyone's like, you know, very crestfallen. And the dragon's like, well, he didn't do what I complied. He goes, now, somebody needs to jump in that river, or I'm going to kill all of you. And one of my other buddies who was a player, you know, he's kind of like a rules nerd, knows the rules. He goes, Derek, dragons only have 3 suggestions per day. And I go, oh, no. This isn't a magical suggestion. He's just telling you what's up. And then Smith, Aaron, goes, I get it. He goes, fine. And he looks back at his party. He goes, save me if you can. And he goes, his character's also wearing heavy armor. He jumps in the river. And everyone's like, okay, we did what you did. And the dragon was like, okay, fair play. And the dragon says, but, you know, remember who's in charge here. And I describe how the dragon flaps its wings, banks off. And I go, you see it fly overhead, you know, 200 feet away. And then it banks over, and it flies back over, and then goes, chaotic evil, bitches. And he just breath weaponed the whole party. Even though he told them that if they jumped in the river, he would save them. And so, you know, a bunch of people died from the breath weapon. And then the survivors ran to the river to try to save Aaron. They actually pulled him out of the river. He was already negative and dying from drowning. And then they failed like 7 straight stabilized checks to stabilize him. And he went to -10 and died. So at the end of all of it, like 6, we had like a big party. There was like 6 or 7 people, but like 5 people were dead. I think there were like 2 survivors. But it's this kind of legendary moment. And it goes without saying, by the way, that was the end of that campaign. But yes, it was, and the thing is like, nobody was like really, you know, well, no, that's just, yeah, it was definitely not level. This was 3rd edition. It was definitely not level appropriate damage. It was like a CR9 dragon or like a CR10 dragon against like a level 2 or 3 party. It was not level appropriate damage. It was very inappropriate damage. So while that was, but here's the thing, like, you know, my players, number one, the campaign wasn't really going that well. Because like, if that happened in a campaign where people had been like, oh, we spent an entire session building our backstories, and we were playing that card game that Derek loves, you know, the backstory card game, and we built all these connections to the world, and, you know, or I'm one of those players who like really invested in my character, and I got a custom printed mini, and I even wrote this, you know, 30-page backstory about my character. I could get it. But like, we called it the White Binder campaign. That was literally the name of it, you know? So, nobody was, everyone, was in it for the chuckle. It was kind of funny that, this random encounter, the whole campaign was basically one big random encounter after another. So it ending on a random encounter seemed particularly appropriate. Anyways, but Caddick Evil Bitches is what happened there. Second place in Mario Kart. Third place in Mario Party. Oh, what happened? Were you the best player? Did you win all the mini games in Mario Party? Did you collect the most stars? And then randomly, because that game is a bunch of nonsense, they just awarded a bunch of stars to other people who suck and they won instead? Because it probably did happen, because that's what happens in Mario Party. Lugs, backstory card game? Yeah, I've talked about it before on this channel, Lugs. Let's see if I have them here. Downloads. Yeah, here we go. So this should work. So this is a game from Galileo Games and Broken Indie Games. So basically, it's a deck of cards. The name of it is called just Backstory Cards. You can buy it off of DriveThruRPG. You can get the real cards too. I have the real cards, but you have this list of. Actually, the first thing that you do is you and your players. Now you could do this as a GM, or you could do this as a group. But you fill in this grid, right? So you fill in 3 individuals, 3 groups, 3 places, and 3 events. These are things that are, tied to your campaign. So as a GM, you could pre-populate this with individuals, groups, places, and events that you want to make important to your campaign world, right? So a group could be like the Lankamar Thieves Guild. Another group could be like the Knights of the Silver Flame, right? These are groups that you want to be part of your campaign. Alternatively, you can fill in this chart with information from another adventure or module that you're playing. Like if you're playing a pre-published adventure or pre-published campaign, you can fill this in with information from that campaign setting or that adventure module. So that way, what ends up happening is when the players start using the backstory cards, they will draw a random card, and then the card will indicate, so it says, your allegiances aren't clear when it comes to group. How did PC find out? What don't they know? So that's the prompt. And this is a drama prompt. Not that that really matters, but it's letting you know this is going to introduce some drama into your game. So then what you would do is you would either randomly roll. If you can use the card. The cards all have numbers at the bottom of them, so you can just like randomly pull a card and just take the number, like the 3. Or you can just roll a D4. So in this case, your allegiances aren't clear when it comes to group, or I'm sorry, D3. So what you would do is you would roll a D3, or you could just draw a card and use the number at the bottom and get like a 1, 2, or a 3. And you would say, okay, your allegiances aren't clear when it comes to the Knights of the Silver Flame. And then it says, how did PC find out? Well, PC means generate another random PC in the party. So maybe it's, Bob's character. So in other words, now I've established, and again, we're doing this as a backstory. So we're generating our backstory as a collaborative game. So now it's what we've established is my character does have some sort of weird allegiance issue to the Knights of Silver Flame. And I have to describe this. So how did Bob find out? What doesn't he know? So like maybe, I'm like, oh, I was a member, but but my allegiances aren't clear because it looked like I was betraying them. And Bob found out because of this reason. But what he doesn't know is that I'm actually a double agent, and I'm actually working on the inside to expose some other person that is a traitor within my organization. So he thinks I'm a traitor, but I'm not a traitor. And you're like, but if everybody knows that, then that's not drama. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. This is what collaborative fiction building does. But there's a bunch of different cards that all generate different connections between you, the fellow PCs, and then the individuals, groups, places, and events that you fill out on this setting grid. So that is what a backstory card is. And if you do buy it, go use our link to DriveThruRPG so we get the affiliate credit. That'd be nice. Thank you. It is very cool, and I think people have said here, yes, there is also a Foundry module that you can also use. Yeah, and Shadram used it for Forbidden Lands. That was awesome. Yeah, Forbidden Lands would be great to use it, right? Like you could fill in, what are the factions that you want to have important, right? Shadram, like you could put in the Raven Sisters, you could put in the Rust Brothers, you could put in, whatever. And then for places, you could put in, key important places that are going to come up in the campaign, Very cool. Bob thinks Chaotic Evil Bitches would be a great shirt. Yeah, so I'm imagining like a shirt, sort of like line art, right? Kind of like that classic old like black and white sketch style. And there's just this red dragon, like kind of overhead flyer, and the play, the party is all just like, maybe you could somehow draw them to like make it look like they're surrendering, but they're actually getting burned to death. And then the dragon just, it says at the top, right? Or, Chaotic Evil Bitches or something. That'd be pretty funny. Chain Earl, did I talk about Torchbearer yet? I did. Raven Sisters, they sound hot. No. They're sort of a persecuted society. Yeah. I was like, they're sort of a persecuted secret cult of nuns. But yeah, there you go. Don't. So yeah. Battle nuns. I don't know about battle nuns. I would say they're more like kind of druid nuns, really, more than anything. But so yeah, backstory cards are pretty cool. So, anyways, thanks for hanging out, everybody. So yeah, and the world may never know where we come down on fudging. But the fact is that you got to do what's right for you and your group, and I don't think there's any shame in having that kind of honest and open discussion. But I do personally believe that it is not a good thing, and that's why we roll dice to find out what's going to happen. Right? I play to find out what's going to happen. I don't find out what's going to happen and then play. For me, it's just even personally, I want to be as surprised and as delighted as my players. I don't think it is. I don't think that it is a one-way street, right? Where the GM is telling a story to the players, and that the GM has some sort of responsibility to the story that any more than any other character does. I think the players share in that responsibility evenly. Any desire to check out Grim Wilds? I would say no, but I was looking at my Reddit saved post list the other day, and one of the posts that I saved. Dang, Reddit, why are you going so slow? I was looking at my saved posts, and this was from. Let's see here, saved. I think it was from a while ago. Yeah, it's from 7 months ago. I saved a post called Grimwild. It's D&D 5e, but with streamlined narrative rules now on Backer Kit. And when I save a post, it usually means like, oh, I should take a look at that later. And I never actually took a look at it later. So I recognize the name, and I just saw it the other day. But and to be clear, my dragon was making his rolls in the open. But I think it's fun. I think it's more fun to divorce yourself from any expectations, because then you can't be disappointed. Did I back it? No, I never did. That's why I said I would have completely forgot about it, but I was looking at my streamlined post, Vin says, man, I'm so tired of streamlined 5e already. I don't know what it is. I really don't. I 5e, I mean, D&D in general, is just like, it's very confusing to me because on one hand, it seems like a very simple game, but then you look how thick the player's handbook is and you go, what the hell is going on in this game? And then you look at the way that people want to play it and the way it's presented, and it's like a, I don't know, it's like a changeling, it's like a doppelganger. Like it'll be whatever it's somehow too complex, but also too light. Like, how can a game be all of the things? I don't understand it. And I agree with you. Everybody has always just talked about streamlining 5e. Now, to be clear, 3e was very much not streamlined. So, like, you know, but I don't think they ever really tried to say that it wasn't. The old combine 2 games together. I mean, that's fine. I mean, when I played DTX, it was kind of like a super lightweight 5e plus PBTA, kind of, sort of, but not really. I agree. Play to find out what happens is one of the best TTRPG mantras. I think it's one of the most important ones. It's why we play it. Mark loves the 2024 D&D. I haven't read through it all yet, and it's been on my list to do, because like, one of the things that we wanted to do, we didn't get to it this year, but like I wanted to sort of do like a 2024 D&D versus Pathfinder 2 remaster. Like, which one do I think was more successful? The problem is I don't know 5e D&D well enough to like be able to really tell you how many changes are. Like, a lot of things I like in the 2024 D&D game, like people are like, that was in Tasha's, and I was like, okay, well, I didn't own Tasha's, you know, like, and they're like, that was in a Unearthed Arcana article from 2019, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't read that article, but it seemed like a cool thing, you know. Give me skill-based games, okay, with talents and feats, and I'm set. I don't need classes and I don't need levels. I'm still kind of torn on talents and feats. As a gamist, I like them. As a player as a GM who wants to, you know, make a lot of rulings, I sometimes don't. I'm very torn about the talents. It's because 5e feels inelegant ultimately. The verbiage and whatnot feels clunky. I mean, no RPG. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say like Torchbearer is like the best edited, best written game of all time. It definitely isn't. So, I mean, I can't really fault them for that. I mean, I read all these articles all the time, and I don't really understand what they're saying, but like I know the language, like I know the talking points, even though I don't really understand them. Like people be like, well, you have to understand in 5e, right? An unarmed attack, okay, is a weapon attack, but it's not an attack with a weapon. That's different. A weapon attack is any sort of attack where you're armed, which includes unarmed. But an attack with a weapon is very specifically not unarmed. And, you know, an attack with a capital A is the attack action, whereas attack with a lowercase a is any time that you're making an attack. So it's like, I get it. That sounds terrible. And that sounds confusing. If you expect the rules to be, you know, completely perfect and without need for modification. Bob says, DTX. You don't even know what I don't even know what DTX was, Bob. They are making a Dungeon World 2. And I understand, and people are losing their minds already because they haven't announced anything except that they're getting rid of hit points. And everyone's like throwing their hands up and like throwing a hissy fit. I mean, to be fair, some people are like, yay, this is the one thing I had a big problem with Dungeon World. And, you know, no, Sage Latora and Adam Coble are not involved. They sold the entire license. They sold the entire thing to actually to Luke Crane or Luke Crane Enterprises or someone that Luke Crane's involved with. They sold it entirely to him, and even Luke Crane isn't designing it. They're hiring 2 designers. I don't remember the one, but the other one is Spencer Campbell, who did Chasing Adventure. So, to be completely clear, however, you know, I do think that Adam kind of got shafted on that experience. While I do think he made a terrible, horrible faux pas, and I do think that it was a very bad thing. I think he kind of got overly self-corrected. But you know, so while again, it was horrible and messed up, you know, but I don't think he should have literally lost his entire career because of that. So, also, I think a lot of people that, his response was not great, but his response was only because he was getting so vitriolically attacked. So I agree, his response was not great. But I will say this: back when this was a big thing, a lot of the people who were dragging Adam didn't actually ever see the actual event that had occurred. And so like that was the part where it was like, it's one thing if you watch the event and you understand like what was the context of what was happening and how it was happening. But I heard a lot of people that, like for example, it's a common misunderstanding that people are like, well, he sexually assaulted a woman, not actually, but he sexually assaulted a woman in the game. And that wasn't what it was at all. It was her character was a cyborg and she was like jacking in, like with like a 1/4 inch, plug into her like cybernetic core. And Adam described it as like being like penetrative and feeling like an orgasm, or like feeling like he put a sexual. It was weird. It was creepy. It was cringy, but he put this like weird sexual tinge to it, like that by jacking into this cybernetic network, that it was like she had this kind of like body orgasm. That's how he described the feeling of her jacking into this thing. But people took that and they were like, oh my God, it was totally inappropriate. He sexually assaulted this character in character on the game show. And I was like, I don't think you watched the show. I don't think you saw that. Was it cringy as hell? Hell yeah. Would I have ever done that? Not in a million years. But, it's one of those things where I'm like, sometimes you get caught up in the moment. You tell a story and it didn't land the way that you wanted it to land. So anyways, that now to be 100% clear, it was not a good thing, but why go there? It's cringe. I agree. But you know what, Sketchosaurus? I see a ton of stuff, and I mean a ton of stuff on actual plays that really put me, make me cringe too. It's just very cringy. I think, to be honest with you, we've done them on this channel. I think actual plays are just cringy, kind of. So I think that's the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, to be clear, I think he was in the wrong. And I will also completely believe that like he had behavior that had, that was not acceptable going on behind the screen scenes. But I think that's, there's this kind of idea of like, don't meet your heroes, like there's a lot of people who like, I'm not like any sort of influencer or whatever, but you meet people, you hear more information maybe when you're a little bit more behind the scenes. And kind of at the end of the day, like all these people are, a lot of them are just, this is a business to them. And, the people that they work with and the people they work for, like they're just as scummy and sketchy as any random, business would be, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, they're people. And I think people build these people up into these like angelic, better than thou kind of, behavior, and I just don't think that like, that's, anything that is, we should never hold these people to those kind of standards. I remember like when like the whole Satine thing happened, we were at Origins while that was happening. And people were just like, wow, this person was completely, out of line. She was just completely, crazy. Well, you know what? The truth is, there's a lot of people in the RPG industry that are just bad actors. And some of them get caught and some of them get called out. But I think the mistake we make is assuming all these people are just as nice and as sweet and as, whatever as they appear to be. And understand that that's just a job. That's just an acting, So, never meet your heroes is what they say. Like, for example, when Vin came here and met us, he was like shocked. He was like, wow, you guys actually are like this. Like, we see you on YouTube Live and whatever like that, but we never, you're never sure if that's how people actually act in real life. And then you meet them and you go, oh, wow, they actually do act like that. That's actually kind of surprising. That's kind of shocking. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've met a lot of people that I'm like, wow, this person is really cool. They actually are kind of like what they appear to be on the screen. But I've also met people where I've been a little like, okay, this is kind of a grift for you. This is kind of you view this as just a money churning machine, So, and yes, Kevin, I mean, that is a great lesson for folks. And I myself have this problem as well, which is that when you're live like that, you really have to be extra careful with your safety tools. And there's a lot to be said about like maybe these things should be recorded live, or and then played back, because that way if something happens that is very disturbing to somebody, and maybe they even play an X card, right? You don't necessarily want that to even be seen on the internet. You want to have that ability to go back and sort of editorialize that, and remove that. And I think that is not a bad idea, and I for one, I do my live shows, and I don't know, Bob could start going off on some crazy rant and I would be like, oh shit, I don't know what to do, So, not saying that Bob would, but, and I have people from my stream and my community on, and I don't know what they're going to say. I don't have a dump button, so I'm kind of taking a risk there, perhaps, So I do think that safety tools are an important thing to happen, and it's a good lesson in why they should be in existing. Yep, internet people can be super odd, and of course these guys are odd too, but they're odd in exactly, we're not normal people by any stretch of the imagination, but we are, you get what you see. But yeah, I mean, again, I think the whole, whether it's Adam or Satine or whatever like that, I just think that part of the problem there is that these people present themselves as one way, and then people find out that, oh, they're just as weird and flawed and as, messed up as the rest of us. And then we potentially hold them to a higher standard than maybe we should, but then maybe we should never have put them up on that pedestal to begin with. So if anything, my lesson is don't worship these people. Don't worship. God knows nobody worships me, which is a good thing. But I'm saying, like, don't think that any of these YouTubers, any of these influencers, don't think that they care about you. Don't think that they care about the game. Don't think that they're actually outraged about something that Wizards of the Coast did, because for all you know, they're getting paid by Wizards of the Coast. Like, it's just like, it's they, it can be hypocritical is all I'm saying, and for a lot of people out there in the influencer environment, and that's not just for D&D, this is for any influencer environment, it's a business, and they are going to say, and they are going to do what it takes to get businesses, to get money in, so yeah. Here's $5 because clearly we're friends. So here's the thing, though. Like, actions speak a lot louder than words. So, I appreciate that, Brave Flocks. People in our community, know that, it's kind of a joke that, like, we collect money from people, from tips and from our Patreon. But, I just gave away over $1,200 of gift cards to random giveaways to my Patreon members, which is, probably about, 2 months worth of profit or of income that I make. So, I did that last month to celebrate our 3 or 4 year anniversary as a channel. When we had our first big convention that we went to, and we had a bunch of patrons show up, 10 patrons or something. We took all of our patrons out to dinner, and KOLC, me and Smith and Bob, we picked up the bill and we paid for all of our patron. Let me tell you something. I'm not trying to raise myself up here, but let me tell you something. That is not how most of these things work. Most of these things work. And some of my patrons who are here know that they have gone out of their way to come to me and say, Derek, let me do this thing for you for free. And I tell them, no, You cannot do this for me for free. If you're going to do this for me, it's going to be under a contract, and I'm going to pay you. And since I'm not in a position to pay you right now and pay you what you're worth, we're not going to do it. You are already giving me $5 or $10 or $25 a month. The last thing that I'm going to do is then take from you your labor or your time. And they're like, no, but I want to. And I said, I don't care that you want to. I won't accept it, because that puts me in a weird situation. And I don't want to take advantage of the relationship that we've built. You know, I'm also like, for example, I'm one of those people that's like, if a friend does something for me, I don't pay them a low price. That's my friend. If anything, I should pay them more money, right? Like I shouldn't be using that relationship unless there's like a literal quid pro quo, tit for tat. But like, if it's just, you know, they're doing it because, oh, you're such a nice guy. No, that doesn't work for me. And so there's been a lot of what I will call that a lot of other content creators will take advantage of as free labor that I really try to avoid as much as I can. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are more than happy to accept freebies and all this other stuff, and, you know, plug stuff. And I mean, there's a reason why we've never had a paid advertiser. Now you might say, oh, it's because nobody. Well, Derek, what about, we get stuff all the time. There's a whole chat where Bob sends me when we get an email in from somebody who says, hey, do you want to plug this thing? Do you want to do this thing? You want to plug this thing? And we usually say no thanks, because I'm like, I don't play that game. I'm not going to say it's great, you know. They never responded to us, so I don't think they will. But when Raid Shadow Legends sent Bob an email and said, hey, we'd like to sponsor you, I just said, you know what, I'm going to put it up to the patrons, because we've joked forever about how, you know, even Raid Shadow Legends wouldn't sponsor us, because that was like the joke, is that they'll sponsor anybody, but they wouldn't sponsor us. And so they sent us this email, and I told the patrons, and I said, I'm going to put it to a poll, and we're going to do whatever you say, because I'm not going to promo something if you guys think that it's terrible. However, Bob sent that email to them, and then they never responded back to us. So more than likely, we are not going to be sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. So any case, so that's my take on all of this, is like, you know, don't hold these people up. They're not great people. And again, some of them are, but you never know. You know, you never know. But honey, yeah, sure. All the classic sponsorships we do not get. And that's okay, you know. And then I can do whatever kind of content I want to do, and I don't have to worry about upsetting anybody or anything like that. Plus, then I feel this weird responsibility, like, oh, I have to make sure it's a good response. How much time till New Year's? It's 10 o'clock, so 2 hours. So we're probably not going to make it, because I'm starting to get a little tired. My throat is definitely starting to go here. And plus, I'll let people actually, you know, see to their New Year's festivities and watch the ball drop. I don't think I've done that in years, though. What non-game life goals do I have this year? Great question. Well, new house when? So, excuse me. So obviously I've been trying to move, but mortgage rates have not gone down. And my understanding is the estimation is that with a incoming, with the new presidency, they are probably not going to go down. If anything, new housing starts are going to become more expensive, depending on whether or not these tariffs get invoked. And please, no political conversations in the chat. We don't need that. I'm just saying that, as whether you're Republican or Democrat, the fact is, if they raise these tariffs, it's going to make things more expensive. So home prices may be up. So that is not bode well for me to move. So especially with the qualifications for what I want. If I'm going to move, it needs to meet certain qualifications for my lifestyle, my hobbies. I want to be able to woodwork and ideally be able to build a studio again in my home, so I don't have to pay my home and my rent for a studio. But then if I make it a studio, I can't be too far out in the boonies, because then, you know, there's no way that my, you know, Bob and other people could ever get to me. So it's got to be kind of close to civilization. So it's pretty tough. So also, the last month or so, I spent a lot of money. I spent $13,500 to get my house painted. My basement or my garage is, all the debris and stuff is cleaned up, but the walls still need to be removed or painted. They're still basically blackened. The garage is still damaged from the fire. So I still need to get that. And so I do want to get my garage ready. So from the home perspective, I'm just going to work on getting everything up to date so that not only is it sellable, but it's like livable. From a game perspective, so in December of 2023, I was about 310 pounds, give or take. By August 2024, I was down to about 240, maybe let's call it 245, 243. So whatever that is, 60 pounds. That's when my mental health issues started happening. I got into some new meds, which are known to cause a little bit of weight gain. So I've probably gained back about 10 pounds over the last 3 months. So I'm probably back up to around 250. So I would like this year to get back into the gym full-heartedly, devotedly, actually start really lifting again. Not because of any aesthetic reasons. I just find it enjoyable. I think it's a really nice way for me to work off a certain amount of stress that you can never relieve unless you're doing something very physical. And I don't live a very physical life. Play more racquetball. I don't think I'm going to start running again just because it's pretty tough on my knees like I used to. I'd love to be able to do it, but I'm just worried about tearing stuff up. But I get pretty good workout doing 3.5 miles per hour on an 8 or 9 incline. So anyways, all that taken into account, my hope is to lose another, maybe 30 or 40 pounds. Get down to about, again, I'm 6'1", almost 6'2". So if I can get down to 205, 215, somewhere in that range, I'd be pretty happy with that. So Boothby says lifting is not enjoyable, but it does reduce lift stress. So I find lifting to be very enjoyable, actually. I do. I also find running to be very enjoyable. I just need to be in good enough shape to enjoy it. That's part of the problem. But oh, buddy.
Vin tipped $70. Happy New Year, man. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Also, remastered spells ranked when?
Thank you, Vin. That is very generous of you, sir. Thank you so much for that. The Australian dollars counted to 2025 and the good things to come. And one of those good things to come is all spells ranked. I am going to do it sooner than later. We're going to cover the new books that we never cover from originally, and then we're going to go cover the books of the spells. So there's going to be a little bit of a homework assignment. I might have to parse that out to some of the Pathfinder 2 folks, especially since Southern Beaches is going to be ending here this next month, and there's going to be that gap. We can task them with figuring out what spells changed. The pain must flow. I mean, it's debatable which one was more legendary for its pain, whether it was all spells ranked or all archetypes ranked. I think all spells ranked I got crazier in, but thank you very much, Vin. Appreciate that. And again, love Vin's been with us for 3 years and flew out from Australia just to visit us. It's the only reason he came to America. But while he was in America, he made it a distinct point to actually fly to Cleveland just to get to hang out with us and meet us, and we got to play with him, and we got to have him on a crazy episode of the show, and it was a lot of fun. So thank you, Vin. That is very, very generous of you. Appreciate it. I dread all day knowing I have to go to the gym that night. Man, Boothby. Well, part of the problem is, Boothby, though, you are power lifting, right? Because you're lifting very low reps. It's very taxing on the body, very taxing on the nervous system. So it makes a certain amount of sense when you're lifting 3 reps or 4 reps or whatever, 5 reps. I get it. I mean, I do think that is a lot more intimidating than just I'm going to go do 8 to 12. Sort of more of a hypertrophy type build as opposed to a pure strength building regimen. And so I think your regimen, I don't know if you're 5x3 or something, but yeah, 3x10, 3, or an example, for me, like a really chill routine is like I'll do 3 by 8 to 12, right? So I'll have a weight. Let's say the weight's 150 pounds. So I come in and I do 8, and then what I'll do on the last set is I'll do AMRAP. So I'll do as many reps as possible on the last set. So let's say it's 3 by 8 to 12 of 150 pounds. So I come in, I do 10, and then on the AMRAP I'm able to do like 13 or 14. And I go, okay. So the next time I come back, I don't change the weight. I leave it at 150. And now I try to do 12, 12, and then AMRAP. And if I can get in 12, 12, and at least 12, then I move the weight up, by 5 pounds or something like that, or 10 pounds, depending on what your progression goals are. But the situation here is I'm not increasing the weight every time. I'm either increasing the reps or increasing the weight. But when you're doing very low reps, increasing the rep by 1 is actually a huge percent increase. So, I think for me personally, anything in the 3 to 5 rep range is scary, especially if I'm getting under the bar. Like I don't know why, but like low rep deadlifts don't really bother me as long as they're like a hex bar deadlift or a trap bar deadlift, because regular deadlift, unless I do it sumo, but even then, like, it's just weird for me. I just prefer, maybe I'm undeveloped hams and I just take over my quads, but I love a good hex bar, trap bar. But like squats, heavy squats I would dread those. Because you're really getting into the bar. Maybe not even so much with the barbell, but the heavy squats were just always very scary for me. Not like scary, but like I would dread them. So it's randomly turned. So I have built a lifting routine, which I'm going to try to do, which is I've never done before. It's an upper lower split. I've always done push pull legs. So I've never done upper lower. So I'm interested to see how I can adjust this. And it's very deliberately not strength based. It's more hypertrophy lit based. It's more of the rep ranges are, like 6 to 8, 8 to 12, 10 to 15. So it's like the idea is like I have one primary movement, a couple secondary movements, and then a handful of tertiary movements. And for me, if I only do the primary and the secondaries and I need to get out of the gym, if I don't do the tertiary movements, that's fine. Those are isolation type, small muscle exercise stuff. If I miss those, not a big deal. If I have the energy and I want to go in and attack, then I'll do the tertiary reps. But if I'm just like, whatever, it's fine. I had to give up squatting for the moment. Knee is giving me too much trouble. Swapped it with a leg press up to 600 pounds. I like the leg press. I get it. A leg press is not a squat, and there's a lot of stabilizer muscles. And, when you're in a squat, you're using your adductors and your abductors and your core to like balance and the bar and all that other stuff, especially like a big barbell back squat. But I always felt weird about the leg presses because I've always been like, I don't understand. It's very difficult for me to connote how much weight am actually moving, because it's like, it feels like, I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, I leg pressed a quarter ton. And I'm like, I don't know. Is that a lot? I have a hard time like associating how much weight a leg press actually is. So the other thing that's weird about leg presses, and I don't know about, we're talking about weightlifting now, but there's 2 types of leg press machines I've seen. There's leg press machines where you push, where the weight is on the seat. So you're basically pushing away from the platform, right? You're pushing you're pushing up against the platform. And then there's the weights where the weight is on the platform and you're pushing the platform away from you. And for whatever reason, I only like the leg press machines where you're pushing the floor essentially away from you, which is funny because that's not what a regular squat is, right? When you're doing a regular squat, you're starting at the floor essentially, and the floor isn't moving down, you're moving up, which is more like the way that some of the leg press machines are. But for whatever reason, when it comes to the leg press, I like it when the platform moves and your seat or whatever is stationary. I don't know why, but it's such a weird thing, I like the 4-day upper lower because it fits into the week, and it's not bad. Yeah, and it really, for me, I mean, a lot of the research I've seen and talked about basically says volume equated, like muscle synthesis and turnover proteins. Like if you hit the muscle group twice a week, like you can hit it 3 times a week, you know, but you're not really gaining as much. And if you hit it only once a week, you're leaving some gains on the table. So I really like the idea of twice a week of hitting each muscle group. 20 kg is like what, 45 pounds? Yeah. Gyms are tough. Motivation's tough. I joked. There was a time in my life where, so, right, full transparency. I used to be like, in my 20s, I was like 320, 330 pounds. And I've told this story before, but that was in my 20s. And then as I got to my late 20s, I got really into running. And I didn't get as much into lifting until later, which was to my detriment. But I went from 320 down to 180. So I lost 140 pounds. And my whole life was exercising and running and diet and nutrition. Not even diet, but nutrition. I was full paleo, not keto, but paleo, low carbs, no refined carbohydrates or anything like that for many years. That felt pretty good, actually. But then I had a surgery on my shoulder, and then that took me out of commission for a few months, and then things happened. Anyways, eventually I gained the weight back. And then I hiked to the Appalachian Trail, and I lost all the weight. And then I came back, and then COVID happened, and then I gained all the weight back. And then that was me at 310. Now I just lost the 60 pounds, and I'm back down to 250. But what I was going to say is that I was going to write a book when I was really deeply researching it. And the book was going to be titled, because I was so sick of all these health books written by these diet books and these nutritional books and these weightlifting books written by these just incredibly, unbelievably fit people. And they just made it seem like it was this thing. And I was going to, and they would, oh, it's so easy and you're going to feel like you love it. And I was going to write a book, and I was going to put it in the bookstore. And the title was going to be weight loss. It's going to be called like Weight Loss is Not Easy. And then it was going to have like the subtitle of It Sucks, You Won't Like It, and to be honest, you'll probably fail. Like that was going to be the title of my book, because it's so true. You know, there are so many factors that are just weighed against us in this modern day world that just make it so difficult. And failure is so much more common than people think it is, and they feel terrible about it. And they shouldn't, because it is really unavoidable. So anyways, now we're talking about squats. This is Knights of Last Call in pure detail, right? Arguing about fudging, talking about Torchbearer, discussing cancel culture and RPGs, and now we're talking about weightlifting. So any case, that is what I'm hoping to do from a personal perspective, is get my house ready, maybe sell it, maybe move, get better in shape. At this point, I don't really care about a weight. I just care about how I feel, right? I'm in my 40s. You know, I don't really care as much about it. And then play more games with the patrons, play more games with my friends, board games, role-playing games, card games, maybe. I doubt I'm ever going to get back into Magic, like competitively again. So that's a big thing for me. I bought new ice skates, so I'm going to try to, I've been ice skating more. My ice skates got destroyed in the fire. So just been trying to go to ice skate more often. I might buy some new rollerblades in the summertime so I can rollerblade. Find more excuses to get outside with the dogs and stuff. Yeah. I think that's actually probably about it. I mean, very, very low, limited goals here, you know. Take care of myself, take care of my home, game. That's my goals, right? I don't care about the weight, but I would actually like to get to a point where I actually look like I work out. Well, you know, the problem with looking like you work out is, you know, you really have to, that's really all about body fat. I mean, you could be really strong and still be really pudgy, and you just, it does not take a lot of body fat to just make a person look flubbalicious. And it, you know, to get body fat down, you know, you just have to lose body fat. I mean, there's no amount of lifting that is ever going to make you really look cut, you know, or chiseled, you know. Struggling with weight loss, 30 pounds shy of my goal this year. It's not good enough that I lost 70. I didn't get under 200, and that's frustrating. You know, Sketch Source, the thing is, for me, it's about, I'm always torn with this because, I always preach, smart, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and timely goals. And, I think it's important. And a lot of people will tell you, it's important to just say, you need to have a goal. And I think it is. But I also think it's important to understand. And I'm a testament to this because I was a skinny kid. I played hockey and did taekwondo as a kid. So I was a skinny kid. I got fat. I lost weight. I got fat again. Then I got into hiking and I hiked the Appalachian Trail, lost weight. Then the pandemic happened and I wasn't working and I gained weight. Now I've lost weight again. And what I can tell you is, so I've lost 300 pounds, right? But I've lost the same 100 and something pounds 3 times. It's not about a timeline. It's about a lifestyle. You know how they say D&D is something. It's a lifestyle brand. It's the same thing. Like exercise, nutrition, it has to be a part of your philosophy of life. It has to be a part of the way that you can't view it as it starts in January and it ends in June after this arbitrary weight is reached. It doesn't work that way because you know what happens when you view it that way? And by the way, I viewed it that way before in my life. You gain it all back. It might take months and it might take years, but it will come back. And so it has to be, you cannot view it as a thing that starts and a thing that finishes. It is just forever. It is forever and it'll never stop. And that's why you have to view it. And it's like when you get into a mental state of, it's like brushing your teeth, right? Like you don't think about it as like, it's just you do that, you just brush your teeth at the end of the night. That's just what you do, or in the morning or whatever you brush your teeth. And it's not like you're like, oh, well, after I've brushed my teeth enough, I won't have to brush my teeth anymore. No, like you just have to brush your teeth forever as long as you want to have reasonably healthy teeth. So it's the same thing with exercise and nutrition. It's just going to be with you forever. And, Ozempic, semaglutide and tirzepatide, aka Mounjaro, they work. But there's downsides to it. Vin's talking about the hair loss. It absolutely happens because let me be very clear about it. Chemically, it's very simple. Calories in, calories out. But there are a lot of hormonal factors here at work, and being hungry fucking sucks. And the only thing worse than being hungry is being hungry and living in a world and a society, as most of us do, where you are just surrounded by an unbelievable excess of fat, sugar, salt. And that's extremely difficult to sort of, to do. So I think, potentially, I don't know if there's any side effects, but I think that semaglutide and tirzepatide could potentially help a lot of people. But they're not going to, at the end of the day, you still have to eat less and move more. So, but yeah, they're also really expensive. I don't know if they'll be like over in New Zealand, but I know in America, in America, honestly, if they were cheaper, yeah, I know if I could tell my doctor and get them to sign off on that. Like I'm not diabetic, so like that's part of the problem here is like people can get it for weight loss, but it was like really hard to get it for anything but diabetes or type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. If I could, if it was like, they're like, it's $100 a month, I'd be like, sure, let's go for it. Why not? Whatever. Normally I would have been really afraid of the needles. But since I take testosterone injections anyways, because of my low T, now I'm pretty immune to needles because I just do it all the time. But if it was $100, yeah, fuck it, I'll try it. Let me try to do it for 6 months or whatever, see what happens. But it's not. It's like 1,000. I don't know. It's some crazy number, and I think some insurances don't cover it unless it's like for diabetes. If it's just for weight loss, it's optional. They don't cover it, and so it's like crazy expensive. The pharmaceutical companies laugh. There's a reason why they make $8 trillion or something a year. It's crazy. All right, Beowulf, Happy New Year's. Enjoy it with your friend. I've not seen South Park episode in probably 10 years or maybe even more, but I also don't have a TV, but I'm sure they did a good job of that. So, but and I don't think anyone should be ashamed to use those things either. But I think that those, I think drugs can be very powerful things. I mean, case in point, I was literally could not function for almost a month because I was having panic attacks multiple times a day, and I was barely able to hold it together. And they put me on whatever it's called, Levapro or whatever. It's an SSRI. It's only 5 milligrams or something. It's a very small dose. And after a few weeks, I had it under control. And now, eventually, would I like to not be on this medication? Sure, there are side effects. And those side effects, I would ideally not like to have to deal with them. But for the time being, it's worth it. And the costs are pretty minimal, which is nice. And but in the meantime, I cannot deny the fact that this is extremely helpful and is essentially saving what I consider to be my quality of life. And so, yeah, I mean, I think drugs can be a great tool if used responsibly. So, yeah, exactly. Drugs are just a tool. Know the risks and don't go overboard. But you know what isn't a tool that you should use? Fudging. That's the only tool. That's the one tool you shouldn't use. So, all right, folks. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to say goodnight. We didn't really, I guess we're going to be back Thursday. Technically, it's just a normal back to normal. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. Oh yes, listen, there's a reason. I'm a pro, okay? I'm a pro. I've been doing this for a while now, okay? We can always bring it back. But I don't know what we're going to be doing Thursday, but in theory, we should be back. Luckily, my work this week is obviously I have off tomorrow. But I think my boss and I think my whole team, honestly, is off Thursday, Friday. So it should be pretty light for me. So who knows? Maybe we can figure out a way to do one of those European streams on Friday or something, do something middle of the day. Like a noon stream, make it easier for some of our European friends to check it out. But to everyone, I want to wish a happy and safe and incredible new year. Absolutely double down on the safe part. I do want to thank a bunch of people who came out today and supported us. We had Vin, who supported us through tips and super chats and his adventure membership and his Patreon memberships. Thank you so much, Vin. And Vin celebrating, just celebrated last month, I think 2 months ago, his 3 years with us in the Patreon. So Vin, just love you, buddy. Thank you so much for everything. Brave Flocks, Shadram, Cybersmith, Dr. Metropolis, Steven, Duncan, our new members, Agile Monk and Sam, who came in with their own pledges to join the adventure, support the channel, Tundalist, Lollipop Candy, Doc Flamingo, and Fibs. So thank you so much, everybody, for just coming out and just supporting the hell out of us. Appreciate it just a ton. And I really look forward to playing more games, talking to those games. I've talked about those games with you all. Next year is going to be the year of the big 5e killers, right? We're going to have Daggerheart and Draw Steel and DC-20, and I feel like I'm forgetting one. Broken Empires, right? I don't know if that's supposed to be a 5e killer, but and then as for me, stay tuned because oh my God, I can't wait to not play any of them. That's going to be everybody, honestly. But and then from my perspective, I'm excited. I'm going to be running some games for my patrons. And Cosmere, yes. Again, I kind of felt bad that I'm not into Brandon Sanderson's novels because I don't understand the Cosmere verse. Because Max Brooks, who's the lead designer, I love the work that he did in Legends of the Five Rings. So now I want to check out Cosmere. I didn't kickstart it, by the way. But now I want to check it out because I'm like, oh shit, Max Brooks is designing it. Holy shit. That's awesome. I love his work, right? 5e Killer is totally the new WoW killer. 100%. And, and 20 years later, 20 years later, all the WoW killers are literally dead and ground into the dust. And somehow WoW is still going. In fact, WoW almost got a second renaissance with WoW Classic. Turns out people were like, yeah, we'd rather just play the same game over again. Which is crazy. Good for them. But again, I'm going to be running games for my patrons, and I'm kind of excited about it, right? Because we don't know how we're going to be sharing it with everybody. We've discussed whether or not we're going to do it like with a a live stream or if we're going to record it. It comes down to like what the people who are playing in the games are comfortable doing. But you know, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it in if we're only going to do it for the patrons or if we're going to do it live with everybody. But I was saying, you know, Torchbearer inspired you know, the game Darkest Dungeon, and so I was like messing around inside of. And by the way, right now, like it's officially supported. Torchbearer is officially supported only on Roll20. I'm not the hugest fan of Roll20, and so I commissioned a person to I paid a developer to update the Foundry module. There was a Foundry module that someone made like 3 or 4 years ago, but it's way out of date. So I paid them to update it to version 12. But like I've been messing around in Foundry with like what I want the overlay to look like. Because again, Foundry Torchbearer doesn't use like tactical combat, right? You basically just track the monsters and you track what weapons everybody's using and how many hit points they have, or what's called disposition in the game. But I was kind of like messing around with like doing like a 8-bit or like more like a 16-bit kind of like side-scrolling kind of style, and I thought that would be kind of fun to like to do the game like that to add a little bit of fun pizzazz. Vin says, not gonna lie, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, so real simple, basic stuff, you know, and just you know, strong JRPG aesthetic, right? And just kind of do it that way. So we'll see what we do, but you know, my whole thing I realized with VTTs is, if I'm going to use a VTT, when you're sitting around a table, that nothing beats that. But if you're on a VTT, there's this disconnect that you get because you're not there with the people in person. But you know, I want there to be something that people can gravitate into. And so, you know, if you can put together a cool little scene or something like that, I think that can go a long way. But so potentially we might have what essentially might be kind of an actual play. I mean, obviously it's going to be our normal actual plays that we did were technically done as entertainment for the audience. This will definitely just be a game that I am running for patrons because I want to play with them, and they have, you know, earned their right to play in the game. Will just be people will get to view it. So you could argue it will be more authentic, I suppose, maybe, but we'll see. But it may not necessarily be as well produced, you know, because it'll be a little bit more, you know, awkward in that way. Are you saying you want to introduce resonance? I am. When people see stuff that they can connect to and vibe with, I think that works. You know, I think that's a good stuff. So, big shout out to all my incredible patrons for supporting me. We actually grew this month, which we have not done in a long time. I mean, not like a long time, but we have been steady to slightly down for the last 4 or 5 months. You know, I get it. Economy's tough. We're kind of in this weird post OGL bubble, even though we didn't really discuss the OGL, like it did kind of stir things up a lot. But this month, December, we actually had more new patrons than cancellations. So, you know, we're back into over the 400s, and, you know, I was hoping that we were going to get to like 450 this year, but, you know, if we end the year above 400, I'm really happy with that. You know, yeah, I got to pay the Pathfinder. You know what, Jackal? Look, correlation is may not be causation, but you can't deny that we did a bunch of Pathfinder 2 streams. Bam, we grew, and you know what? Quite a few of those people joined Jackal, and they said they went straight to the Southern Beaches. So, you know, you're not wrong. You know, I mean, we don't do 5e, so Pathfinder 2e is our 5e, right? In that way. Oh yeah, huge. I mean, of the 400, Vin, I would say that like 150 are like complete lurkers. They've never even joined the Discord. Of the 250 that are in the Discord, I would say 100 of them are fairly active. So, you know, I would say like, you know, 2/3 of that 400 are pretty much either not interacting with the community or they're lurking. But, you know, 1/3 is still a lot. I mean, there was a time, Vin, when you joined, I think we had like 40 people, you know, so, you know, literally 10 times as many people as when you joined. So remastered spells going to bring in the cash. We'll see. Although remember, whenever I do Pathfinder 2, I also get a lot of hate, and people start threads on Reddit about me and about how I'm an asshole and my guests are elitist know-it-alls. And so, any case, Happy New Year's to everyone, and I hope to see you in the new year. I'll see you next year. it may already be next year for you, so I guess that doesn't work. But for me, it will be in about 2 hours. For everybody else, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening if you're celebrating, or your New Year's Day if you're already there. Yes, that is true. To be clear, that is an unintentional reference. It was literally called Knights of Last Call because we drank. Originally, we used to drink a lot. The fact that it was Knights of Last Wall was kind of just like a bonus. So, oh yes, everyone joins to tell me I'm wrong. That's totally fine. I'm not right. I'm often wrong. Fun stream, fun hang. Well, thank you everybody for that. And Self-Gift says, I missed the drinks. Well, Bob swore off drinking for a year, and I don't really drink that much anymore either. So I would love to get something that we could do with some sort of, the beer of the week was good. It was better when I instituted a policy where I told the guys, you guys can't have more than 2 drinks. Some of those episodes where Bob and Matt and so we're having like 4 or 5 drinks, and obviously, the one where, Smith, the birthday bash, things got a little too loose for my liking. So, that needs to be cut down a little bit. So also turns out drinking alcohol makes my mouth get really moist and wet. And I just spit all over the place. Maybe it's just the alcohol, but I thought I sounded terrible whenever I would drink. Anyways, fun stuff to come. And I look forward to doing it with you all. So from myself here at Knights of Last Call home base, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next year on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.